The Emancipation Day picnic was an event that is said to have rivaled only Christmas as the high point in the lives of Black Canadians living in the Niagara region. From 1924 until the early 70s, as many as 8,000 people could be expected to converge at Lakeside Park in Port Dalhousie to attend the big picnic each year. We live in Niagara. The Emancipation Day picnic was an event that is said to have rivaled only Christmas as the high point in the lives of Black Canadians living in the Niagara region. From 1924 until the early 70s, as many as 8,000 people could be expected to converge at Lakeside Park in Port Dalhousie to attend the big picnic each year. We live in Niagara, we work in Niagara. Let's support each other because we know that together we are stronger. Join us Saturday, August 1st as we celebrate Emancipation Day by supporting Black-owned businesses. When we say Black Lives Matter, what we simply mean by that is we are part of the community, we care about our community, and we want all people to be part of the community as well.
Hey guys!
Niagara has so many places to discover. The diversity keeps growing. Let's come together and welcome each other. Emancipation Day is a day of celebration. A day you go out and greet your neighbors. A day you take your family out on a picnic. A day you do something out of the ordinary. While you're at it, don't forget to hashtag Emancipation Day STC. We already know together we are stronger.
It's Maranatha Blaze.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Erica. I'm from Matter of Black.
Hi, I'm Natasha from Black-owned 905 and Matter of Black.
Hi, I'm Mutsa from Matter of Black.
Hi, I'm Rachel from Matter of Black.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jada from Matter of Black.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bawin Same from Matter of Black.
Matter of Black is a community
Hi, everyone. I'm Erica Williams from Matter of Black.
Sorry, Erica. Matter of Black is a community organization with the mission to uplift and amplify Black voices, Black businesses, and Black history within our community. We hope that you enjoy the speakers that we have for you, as well as the entertainment. And don't forget to check out our Black Market hosted by Black-owned 905. And today on Emancipation Day, when you go out to celebrate, I hope that you are planning to make some purchases from our Black vendors, as well as have an actual Emancipation Day picnic. While you're at it, take a picture and visit our Instagram page, Matter of Black Niagara, for a chance to win in our giveaway. Now we're going to have Tasha introduce our next entertainer.
Thank you, Erica. I'm Natasha, and I would like to introduce to you Renatha Burdinen singing Lift Every Voice from Ottawa, Ontario.
I think we're just waiting on that video to be put up. So in the meantime, I will tell you guys about some of the things we have going on today. So of course we have this, which started at 11. We have 3 amazing speakers that are going to be up next, Rochelle Ivory, Rochelle Bush, and Dr. Tamari Katosa. Following that at 2, we will have the flag raising at City Hall and some special performances mixed in here. So you can just stay on the live stream all the way till 2:30 till we're done with the flag raising. We also have an online vendor market, which is featuring Black-owned businesses in the Niagara region. You can go on to Matter of Black Facebook, Mayor Walter Sendzik Facebook or Instagram page. That link is up all over. Tasha has it on Black-owned 905. And you can just click that link to participate in that vendor fair. Stay tuned on social media today, and we might be posting a couple little giveaways here and there. But we're really excited to have everybody a part of our virtual Emancipation Day and look forward to hopefully being in person come next year.
And while you're at it, thanks, Jada. While you're at it, don't forget to hashtag Emancipation Day STC.
Oh, and there's so many things, I forget them. The FirstOntario Performing Arts Centre is having 2 live performances in their backyard tonight. One at 5 p.m. and one at 7 p.m. with Ocon. So it's free to attend. There's a limit of 100 people, so show up maybe half an hour early just to be safe. Masks are mandatory, and you sit in your little pod. Each pod can have 2 adults and 2 children, and your masks can then come off in the pod. They ask that you do not go if you're showing any symptoms of COVID-19 or if you're not feeling well. But that's also going on tonight. And tomorrow on Sunday, we have a virtual performance by the LMT Connection at 7 p.m.
So Jada, while we're waiting here, can you just tell everyone some of the gifts that we receive from the community, what people can win today?
Yeah,
We have a lot on to give.
Yeah, very generous by the vendors today. We have 2 giveaways. We have one for Instagram and one for Facebook. There's so many things. Delicious pepper sauce. There's a 1-hour photo shoot with She Shot That. We have
some generous gift certificates from Flavor Fuel as well as from Jamrock Uri. So that's very exciting.
Mm-hmm. And lots of products from various businesses who want to show their love by giving back a little bit.
I'd also like to say that Flavor Fuel is open today for lunch with $5 lunch specials from 12 to 4.
And if you have not had a chance to try Flavor Fuel, delicious, and these prices can't be beat. A lot of our vendors have, in fact, given discounts for purchases made today in support of Emancipation Day and for, bringing the community together to celebrate Emancipation Day, because we're celebrating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, while we're waiting here, I just wanted to say a little piece. For those of you that are watching, I've had the opportunity to work with this incredible community leaders that you have on the screen right here. The ladies that you're seeing on the screen now, they're so passionate about where they live. For the past month and a half, I'm not born in St. Catharines, but just being part of this group, you feel the energy, you feel the love they have for the community. They've put in so much time to make this day happen. And yeah, these are the people that have been working behind closed doors with other partners to bring Emancipation Day together. So it's awesome. I've learned a lot. You've inspired me, and I would just want to give a special shout out to Tasha. Tasha, thank you for bringing everyone together. Erica, Jada, Rachel, Erica, and Erica, and Mutsa. Just thank you very much, and I just wish you continue to get involved in the community, speak when you have to, and because you're speaking, we're making changes, and that's what we've all been wanting in our meetings. We want change, and because of you, we're making it happen. So as you can see, we were able to bring the whole region together, and it's just because of the work that you do behind closed doors. So I just want to honor that. I'm really inspired, and it's great to work with you all. So it's been very awesome.
Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you, Valerie.
It's great working with you also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think one of the great things about this group, when I think of what we've done, is how we're trying to plan this in a month and a half, and then we're pulling it off, and at the same time we're like, what are we going to do next year? Like, we're so eager, and so we're excited. After this ends, maybe we'll have a few day break, and then I'm sure we'll be back in the meeting room to keep going and keep working in the community. So I'm very excited.
Mm-hmm. So much work to be done, and we're up for it. We're up for the challenge.
That's right.
Good morning, friends. I'm adding myself to this stream right now because I think I may be able to play our first video from my computer, because I know that my colleague Dean is having a few technical issues. So if you'll allow me, I'm going to try to share my screen, and we'll be able to watch Renatha's performance.
Thank you, Annie.
I'm going to give it a shot. Thank you all so much for your introductions and for being here and for organizing such an awesome event. Okay, let's see what I can do here. Oh, goodness.
There we go.
There we go.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening sky. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun, our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with the steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out of the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us this far along the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever, forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Wow, thank you so much. That was simply beautiful. Lift every voice. Amazing. I don't know about you guys, but that got me kind of emotional. Beautiful. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this Emancipation Day celebration. We have an exciting lineup, and we're so happy that we could share this with all of you. As Erica mentioned earlier, please remember to visit us on Matter of Black on our Instagram page for more details about our Black-owned giveaway. I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Judge Rochelle Avery is one of 10 citizenship judges in Canada and a paralegal professor at Mohawk College in Hamilton. She has a degree in criminology from the University of Windsor, a postgraduate certificate in alternative dispute resolution from York University, and has co-authored the textbook Tribunal Practice and Procedure for Legal Professionals. I'd like to give a warm Emancipation Day welcome to Judge Rochelle Avery.
Thank you so much, Erica. I really appreciate that. I'm going to figure out where I need to be looking. Okay, I think I'm looking in the right spot here. Okay, so good morning, everyone. It is my great privilege to be here with you this morning celebrating Emancipation Day. I would first like to thank Matter of Black and Black-owned 905 for inviting me to be a part of today's Emancipation Day celebrations. I have been asked to share with you today some of the rich and lasting legacy of people of African descent in Niagara, and most specifically Niagara-on-the-Lake. Before I do that, I wanted to touch on Emancipation Day and what it means to me. Emancipation Day is absolutely a day to recognize when the enslavement of African bodies was finally abolished in most British colonies, including what is now known as Canada. It is also a great day of celebration and remembrance and reflection. And most importantly, it is a day to focus collectively on the actions we must take to moving forward to advance continued freedom, equity, and fairness. Now, I should note that the Slavery Abolition Act of 1834, which came into force on August 1st, 1834, what we now call Emancipation Day, only freed those who were under the age of 6 years old. Those who had been enslaved and were over the age of 6 were deemed apprentices and were required to work for a 40-hour work week with their enslavers, in which they received absolutely no compensation as repayment, and it was as repayment to their former enslavers. Full emancipation did not come into effect until midnight on June 31st, 1838. So freedom did not actually occur until August 1st, 1838. Additionally, enslavers in the British colonies were compensated £20 million at that time by the British government for the loss of their free labor source. £20 million in the 1830s is equivalent to billions of dollars today. And the British taxpayers were repaying that debt associated with the compensation until 2015, not that very long ago. So before I begin, I want to stress, I am not a historian. Much of the information that I'm sharing with you today can be found at the Niagara-on-the-Lake Museum and at the Follow the North Star exhibit at the Welland Canals Museum. By profession, as Erica said, I am a citizenship judge and paralegal professor. I have also been a Niagara-on-the-Lake resident for the last 10 years. And when my husband and children and I moved to Niagara-on-the-Lake, people were very friendly and welcoming. But they wondered what prompted us to live in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Did we work at the Shaw Festival? We were asked. Was your father a migrant worker? I was asked on another day. Are there more of you moving here? I was asked in a roundabout way by our real estate agent. So while welcoming and generally very lovely, people made us feel that our faces, our skin, our bodies were out of place. And so we began to explore our new town, and as we began to explore our new town, we identified sites and stories where people of African descent contributed widely and deeply to Niagara-on-the-Lake and its history. So I share with you today some of what I have been able to glean. And I also ask that you continue to delve into this rich and deep history that I'm sharing with you, because I'm sharing with you a small fraction, and there is just so much more. So when I say names like Richard Pierpoint and the Colored Corps, Chloe Cooley and the Act to Limit Slavery, Solomon Mosby, John Waters, the Negro Burial Ground, Colored Village, what does that mean to you? These are all names associated with Niagara-on-the-Lake and our rich history right here in Niagara. It should be noted that Niagara-on-the-Lake served as the first capital of the province of Upper Canada, now Ontario, and was known as Newark. It became Niagara in 1798. This is important because many important people and decisions were made here, but many important people lived here and decisions were made here. It is also important because the enslavement of African people existed in Upper Canada, including Niagara-on-the-Lake. Parliamentarians were enslavers. This is really important for you to understand context. So in the late 1700s, Chloe Cooley, one of the names I mentioned earlier, was an enslaved African woman. She had initially been enslaved in Fort Erie, but was purchased in 1793 and brought to Newark. At the time, approximately 700 enslaved African peoples were brought to Upper Canada by Loyalists after the American Revolution. The remaining 1,300 were brought to the Maritimes. Simultaneously, there were Black Loyalists who had fought with the British in the American Revolution, were promised freedom, and had also resettled in the Maritimes and Upper Canada. So there was this dichotomy of the enslaved and the free. This led to conversations about granting freedom to those who had been enslaved. Chloe Cooley's enslaver, Adam Vrooman, like many slaveholders at the time, he was concerned about his chattel because people of African descent were considered property, chattel. So when we even look at the history of trying to find our history here in Upper Canada, much of it is embodied in property that is listed of people who settled in Upper Canada. So some decided to sell their chattel, but Chloe Cooley's enslaver didn't want to be forced to free her if that was actually going to come. And so he arranged for her sale to an American across the Niagara River, right? So Niagara-on-the-Lake, Queenston, that's this whole area of Niagara-on-the-Lake where I'm currently in. Just across the river is Lewiston, right? New York State. And so he arranged for her sale across the Niagara River. Adam Vrooman beat Chloe. He tied her up and forced her into a boat. And Chloe screamed and screamed, and her screams were heard far and wide. but nothing was done. Chloe was sold, and her fate to this day unknown. But this prompted outrage, and Governor Simcoe decided to do something regarding enslavement. At the time, 12 of the 25 parliamentarians were either enslavers or came from families of enslavers. So the Act to Limit Slavery in Upper Canada, Canada's first and only anti-enslavement legislation, was passed in July of 1793. It did not, however, abolish slavery. So many are mistaken when they say that the Act to Limit Slavery abolished slavery. It actually prohibited the importation of the enslaved into Upper Canada, okay? So you could not bring anyone new into the province at the time. The law, however, had three classes of people. Those currently enslaved would continue to be enslaved for life unless granted freedom. Children born to enslaved mothers were granted freedom at the age of 25. So children were also enslaved until the age of 25. Enslavers were encouraged to employ these children at the age of 25 as indentured servants for renewable terms of 9 years for each term. So we all know the harrowing stories of indentured servitude. I won't get into that, but it's important that people understand that, that children born to enslaved mothers were enslaved until 25 and then entered into indentured servitude for 9-year terms. And then the other category, of course, were people who were born free and continued to be free. So the Act to Limit Slavery allowed for the sale of the enslaved within the province and across to the United States. The last known sale took place in 1824. And the last of the enslaved were freed in New York in 1827, despite similar legislation being passed in 1799. So no, Canada did not abolish slavery in Niagara-on-the-Lake. That was done by the British in 1834, and as I said earlier, really came into force in 1838. So what you can imagine, however, was that there was a thriving and very present community of African-descended settlers in Niagara-on-the-Lake. This became known as Colored Village, and it was located roughly south of William Street and between King and Butler Streets. So the next time that you're in Niagara-on-the-Lake, you can go on William Street between King and Butler, and you are in the midst of what was then known as Colored Village. Also, Voices of Freedom Park is very nearby, so I would encourage you to go to Voices of Freedom Park. Now, the community went to the Baptist Church on Mississauga Street, which is today the site of the Negro Burial Ground in Niagara-on-the-Lake. So you will actually see the Negro Burial Ground. There's actually a plaque there, and that was the site of the Baptist Church, where members of the Colored Village and people who lived in the area, surrounding area, would go in order to worship. So while many came as refugees, also through the Underground Railroad to areas like Niagara-on-the-Lake, the Act to Limit Slavery created a bit of a loophole. An enslaver in the United States could get a United States judge to issue a warrant to say that a refugee was fleeing harm and persecution in the United States. Sorry, a refugee that was fleeing harm and persecution in the United States was a criminal and brought back to the United States to stand trial. So those who had escaped under the Underground Railroad, and many are familiar with the many stories relating to Harriet Tubman, of course, who, a moment of silence, right? So people came under the Underground Railroad, but there was a loophole. And so this actually created a serious issue in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And so one such case created quite the firestorm in Niagara-on-the-Lake. In 1837, Solomon Mosby was enslaved by David Castleman, who was a wealthy horse breeder in Kentucky. And Solomon was sent to deliver a message on horse to another enslavement plantation nearby. And this he saw as his opportunity to flee harm and persecution. And he arrived horseless in Upper Canada as a refugee. I use these terms because these are our current day terms. And it's important that we contextualize the experience. And so when I talk about people who fled enslavement in the United States. They came as refugees. We have a very robust refugee asylum process here in Canada now. This was one of the first inceptions of this refugee situation here in Canada. So when Solomon Mosby arrived horseless in Upper Canada as a refugee, the question became, should Upper Canada return him to the United States, knowing that he would receive an unfair trial and be re-enslaved? This became a serious moral issue here in Niagara-on-the-Lake. So the sheriff at the time here in Niagara-on-the-Lake imprisoned Solomon and readied a trial against him because Castleman had found out that he was here, probably through the help of bounty hunters, that Solomon had come to Niagara-on-the-Lake. And so the sheriff imprisoned Solomon, readied a trial against him, and the residents of Niagara-on-the-Lake, both African and white, were horrified. Right? Here we go. We had spent all this time having this long-standing conversation about freedom. And here someone has escaped to freedom, and we are allowing someone to come and take them back into enslavement. Castleman said at the time that the horse that Solomon had utilized as part of his escape was worth $150. Now, at that time, of course, $150 was a lot of money. And he had incurred significant expense to retrieve Solomon from Niagara-on-the-Lake. So the people of the town raised over $1,000 to compensate him, but Castleman refused. He didn't want the money, he wanted Solomon. Lawyers in the town represented Solomon, and the matter was sent to Sir Francis Bond Head, who was the current Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada. And they sent this dilemma to him for decision. 134 residents sent a petition in support of Solomon Mosby. Bond Head ignored that petition and determined that Solomon should be returned to the United States. This land, and he actually said, this land of liberty cannot be made an asylum for the guilty of any color. So local residents protested and blocked the road because they were trying to take Solomon. The demonstrations were described as peaceful, with much singing and preaching. The sheriff kept pushing forward the date of Solomon's extradition, hoping that the protests would stop. Like, hopefully these people will get tired and it will stop and we can just freely take him back to stand trial in the United States. But white townspeople here in Niagara-on-the-Lake provided food and lodging, while fellow African descendants from the area, surrounding areas, arrived to support and lend their voice to this protest movement. When the date was set, Hugh Richardson, who owned the ferries that crossed the river, refused to allow his ferry to be used to return a man to slavery. And then another ferry operator was secured. And when the new date of extradition came, women of African descent, white women, everyone in the town blocked the bridge that the carriage was on. Men in the crowd stood in front of the horses and pushed fence posts through the spokes of the carriage wheels. These protesters were killed and maimed by soldiers' bayonets. And in the confusion, Solomon was able to get out of his handcuffs and escape. The local newspapers all supported the protesters and Solomon's freedom. An additional case later of refugee Jesse Happy and the well-known case of refugee Thornton Blackburn, who ended up owning Upper Canada's first taxi company and recognized in the Toronto Transit Commission's bus train colors. So when we look at the train and bus colors traditionally for the TTC, that was actually reminiscent of this taxi company that was started by Thornton Blackburn and his wife. And so Solomon Mosby, Jesse Happy, Thornton Blackburn, these are all additional stories to this narrative surrounding whether or not people should be sent back to the United States to face their fate, this doomed fate. Another story for you, Richard Pierpoint. Some know this story, and I'm happy because I've met many individuals who know the story of Richard Pierpoint. So I'm going to share it with you. I'm actually taking this directly from the Dictionary of Canadian Biography because it's very succinct and I thought that it would be quite useful. So Richard Pierpoint was born in 1744 in Bandu, which is now Senegal. And when he was about 16, he was captured and enslaved. He survived the crossing of the Atlantic and was enslaved by a British soldier named Pierpoint. So during the American Revolution, he took the opportunity that was offered to the enslaved of enlisting in the British forces and gaining their freedom. So Richard Pierpoint was actually a pioneer of John Butler's Rangers. And so by 1780, he was stationed with them in the Niagara region. On July 20th, 1784, his name actually appears among those disbanded Rangers on a list of persons intended to settle in the Niagara region. So African descendants were entitled to the same proportion of land as their fellow loyalists. And in about 1788, Richard Pierpoint, under his more common name of Captain Dick, was granted 200 acres of land on 12 Mile Creek after much petitioning. And so this later became known as Grantham Township. He was denied on many occasions. This was not a, hey, I'm entitled to my land, can I have it? It was like, no, actually you can't. And eventually Richard Pierpoint was granted this land allotment. So he received patents for the land in 1804 and then sold his lots in 1806. On June 29th, 1794, Richard Pierpoint had been one of 19 signatories to a petition of free Negroes, as it was said, to Lieutenant Governor John Graves Simcoe. And this document provides a rare glimpse into Black settlement or into African settlement here in Niagara. The group consisted of veterans of the late war, which was the War of 1812, and others who were born free, with a few who have come into Canada since the peace, okay? Apparently landless and socially isolated for the most part, they were desirous of settling adjacent to each other. So they wanted to have a settlement near each other, okay? In order that they might be able to give assistance to those amongst them who may most want it. So they wanted a settlement so that they could, build and help each other. They urged Simcoe to allow them a tract of country, and these are all in quotations, to allow them a tract of country to settle on separate from the white settlers. And so it's important that we understand, so the same way that people are otherized now, they were otherized then. It was not necessarily, people were not necessarily treated, well. And so it's understandable that you would want to try to have some self-determination. Okay, so the petition, sorry, I've got a fly in here. The petition was quickly denied on July 8th by a committee of the Executive Council. And its minute books suggest the petition's emphasis on land separate from whites as mostly the explanation, like why do you want to be separate? Between 1806 and the War of 1812, Pierpoint resided in Grantham Township, earning his living as a laborer. The war once again provided him with an opportunity for change, and he proposed to raise a corps of men of color on the Niagara frontier. And his offer was turned down because they actually did not want to fight alongside African descendants. Like, that's just, no, we're not doing that. However, we had taken quite the beating. And eventually, a small corps was raised up by Robert Brunchy in October of 1812. And so Richard Pierpoint volunteered immediately, serving as a private from September 1st, 1812 to March 24th, 1815. The colored or Black Corps, as it was sometimes called, varied between 27 and 30 men, excluding sergeants and officers. And so they fought at the Battle of Queenston Heights on October 13th, 1812. And they were involved in heavy fighting during the siege of Fort George in Niagara-on-the-Lake on May 27th, 1813. The Corps remained with Brigadier General John Vincent's army on the retreat west to the head of Burlington Bay, Hamilton Harbor, and then followed it east again after the Battle of Stony Creek on June 6, 1813. And for the remainder of the war, they were used for labor and garrison duty. Stationed at Fort Mississauga, which they built themselves in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Fort Mississauga currently stands. and also at Fort George, possibly seeing action at Lundy's Lane. So when we go to Lundy's Lane, we see the Battle at Lundy's Lane. So possibly seeing action on July 25th, 1814. When the Corps was disbanded in 1815, Richard Pierpoint returned to the life of a laborer in the Grantham area. On July 21st, 1821, Richard Pierpoint, then a resident of Niagara-on-the-Lake, petitioned Lieutenant Governor Sir Peregrine Maitland for aid, since he was finding it difficult to obtain a livelihood by his labor, and was above all things desirous of return to his native country. His wish to return to the West African settlement he had left in the hold of a slave ship some 60 years earlier was not realized. And instead, he was given a ticket for 100 acres of land in unsettled, it's important that you recognize, unsettled Garifraxa Township on the Grand River near present-day Fergus. And so most of the grants were given to military claimants, including 2 other members of the Colored Corps, Robert Jupiter and John Van Patent. And of the 3, only the aged, very older Pierpoint took up this land, becoming one of the area's earliest settlers. So he was one of the first settlers of Fergus, Ontario. And it should be noted, this isn't in this, but it should be noted that he was supposed to clear the land, erect a house, and put a road within a very short time frame. I believe it was 2 years. And so in May of 1825, he completed all of his duties, clearing and fencing 5 acres and erecting a house. This is in his old age. Many of us, I'm in my 40s and I couldn't imagine doing that, and imagine being 70 years old and doing that. So finally, but not least, John Waters. He was a property owner and landlord who ran for and was elected as Niagara's first African-descended town councillor in 1870 in Niagara-on-the-Lake. He represented an all-white ward, and he was re-elected 3 times, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Many are familiar with my own encouragement of good citizenship and civic engagement, and I cannot stress how important this milestone is to inspire and encourage future generations. Black excellence has been alive and well in Niagara for hundreds of years. And so the enslavement of my people was an interruption in our history. It is not the beginning of our history. It was a long and arduous, painful and traumatic interruption. But those who were kidnapped were real people with their own families, ripped apart, doctors, historians, midwives, royalty, architects, mathematicians, scientists, teachers. So while today we are talking about enslavement, the traumatic and long-lasting effects of that enslavement, freedom from enslavement, it is important to stress that enslavement of African bodies was the interruption and disruption in our rich history of excellence and the pursuit of excellence. And since excellence is in our DNA, we continue to strive despite obstacles, achieve despite barriers, excel despite disparity and disadvantage. So our focus on this Emancipation Day should be a celebration of that legacy of excellence and achievement. And our focus must be on how we will ensure that the barriers, the obstacles, the roadblocks of today are eliminated for our youth and for future generations. So on this Emancipation Day, I want us to focus on the collective actions that we must take in order to advance continued freedom and equity and fairness. This is a call to action for those that understand that there are real and systemic barriers to achievement in our community and are committed to ensure that our young people and future generations should not be saddled with the same barriers that I faced growing up. Many have asked me for the statistics to demonstrate that systemic racism exists. And to that question, I have 2 answers. One, when I tell you my story and the story of so many others, hundreds, thousands of people who had the same experience as mine, you say that those are anecdotal. Well, I took both qualitative and quantitative research statistics when I was in university. The qualitative, or what you call anecdotal research, has been done numerous times. And this sudden disdain of qualitative findings is very convenient, I believe. The quantitative component is challenging because this problem is pervasive and multifaceted. Barriers are related to racism, poverty, discrimination, educational attainment, sexism, etc. So even if I provided you with stats, you would in turn say, how do I know that that's not caused by those other determinants? So I choose to focus on those that are collaborators and allies. I'm not going to focus my efforts to prove to those who do not want to be convinced. And I'm just gonna, sorry, my screen just somehow got smaller on me. So just give me 1 second, because I have a very important quote that I want to share with you. So I'm just going to start again, that I choose to focus on those that are collaborators and allies. I'm not going to focus my efforts to prove to those who do not want to be convinced. As Pulitzer Prize winning author Toni Morrison says, the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language, so you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says you have no kingdom, so you dredge that up. None of this is necessary. There will always be one more thing. And so with that said, again, this is a call to action to those who want to see the tangible change, a better and more equitable freedom, recognizing that the current disparities that we see in educational attainment, incarceration, policing of Black bodies needs to stop. We have work to do. And while conversations are important, we have to walk and talk, as they say in Jamaica. So while we are learning and discussing, let us act. Let's decolonize our curriculum. Let us include the legacy and excellence of people of African descent in our everyday conversations in our schools. Let us create environments where people of African descent are made to feel that they belong no matter where they are, no matter where they live. When the judge walks in the room with my hue and my hair, I have very long locks for those of you who don't know me, why are you surprised? Let's talk about that. Let's dispel whatever is happening there and move forward with positive action, because I can tell you that there is a generation coming up with dreams and aspirations, and you should not be shocked when one of them walks in the room as your boss or your CEO. This is the future we're trying to build in Canada. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Rochelle. I have goosebumps right now from that. Thank you for taking the time out of your, I'm sure your very busy schedule to come join us and educate us on the Black history in Niagara. I'm now going to take the time to introduce Mutsa, who's going to be at the Crispy African Market and Convenience Store, which is actually one of our vendors who we have on our online market. And a reminder that we have 2 giveaways, one on Instagram and one on Facebook, which have prizes that were generously donated to us from our Black vendors. So without further ado, I'll put it over to Mutsa.
All right, I'm here at Crispy African Market and Convenience Store here on Hartsel Road, and we're about to go inside and see what they're up to. Hey, Ola.
Hi, Mutsa.
How are you? Happy Emancipation Day. What are you up to here at the store?
We have a lot of stuff in the store. Direct from Africa, like the cough drops, all the stand forms from Africa. We have lots of them, but we are short of them because of the importation now. We have our peanuts from direct from Africa. You can see it's different. And we have our peanut cookie from Africa. This is all chips, Indomie noodles. It's kind of low in production now, so we are expecting some products this week. So we have Coke from Africa.
Wow.
That you cannot get here in the Accra region.
Wow.
This is Coke direct from Nigeria.
Direct
from Nigeria. All imported, and Sprite.
Wow.
You want to try one of those sometimes and enjoy the taste. And we have a lot of seasoning. This is Onga seasoning, Maggi cubes, Maggi crayfish and stuff. No chicken, no beef.
What's this, Ola?
Which one. This is a stockfish from Africa. You can see how big it is.
Wow.
You see. This is rich man's food. Africa. So we have lots of them, different sizes. We have the flakes, see, and the hot one. So these are our seasoning from Africa. These are totally different tastes. If you try them, you're gonna love the taste. This is really home taste.
Wow. I need some of that.
Yeah, we have hot pepper, real hot pepper. No mixture. We have shrimps. We have crayfish. No dead sea. It's all cleaned out. We have different kind of dry meats from different parts of Africa. We have frozen fruits too, from all African, Ghana, Nigeria, Congo, Togo, different African countries. And we have our fish. So we have our catfish. Here in Niagara region, we have catfish. Don't run to Toronto. Enjoy your pepper soup. See how big it is? And all clean. You don't have to stress. And we have our whitening fish, all clean. They are all affordable prices. And we have our mackerel fish. I think I can open this. Oh.
Wow, opening fresh.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see how fresh and nice they are. Yeah. No finger bites. And our tilapia too is very big and clean. See? All clean. So you don't have to stress yourself to Toronto anymore. We have it all here. That's our storage, our provision section, Milo milk at all affordable prices. Yes. So we have our grain section, our gari, our cassava flour, cassava flakes, all here in the Niagara region. You don't have to run around. You can get everything here.
Everything in the
here.
Niagara
This
region.
is our beans, our peeled beans, yellow beans. You know, everything is here. Our semolina, semovita, golden wheatlet, cornmeal, and stuffs. So I want you to come visit us as soon as possible. See our fufu.
Oh, you have hair stuff too?
Yeah, we do. We are going to that as soon as possible. Yeah. So
Wow.
we have different hair products from Africa. These are not China made. They are all from Nigeria. Inupeju, Lagos. And all our hair treatments. We have hair wonder. We have hair mayonnaise, and people have tried them out and they really worked. So if your hair is breaking, don't wait. Run down to Ola Store, Crispy African Market. We have our crochet braid, different kind of crochet. Look nice for your bubble. So we are going to the fabric section. We have the headgear. Let me show you our headgear. So if you are having your African day, don't be scared. Allah is here to take care of you. See? Allah is here to take care of you. We have different kind of this, different type of it. We have a lot of them in storage. So.
Nice, nice.
So don't be scared. Run to Crispy African Market. We'll treat you good. Give you the best. So this is our fabrics. You can see all well made.
Mm.
Yeah. You can see them.
Wow.
Yeah, so different kind of stuff. We have cloths for office wear.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you have meats too.
Yeah, we have meat. We have different kind of meat. Goat meat, cow meat, the cow foot, the cow skin, turkey, chicken. Well, see, yeah. See, this is our turkey, fresh turkey, frozen turkey. Our cow skin. See how neat and clean they are. And the cow foot.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is the cow, the goat meat. See. So we are loaded. Don't waste more time. See us today at Crispy African Market And happy Emancipation Day. Thank you.
What time are you open until today?
We open till 6 p.m.
6 p.m. And then every other day?
Every other day, 6 p.m. until COVID is over.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Ola.
you.
We'll see you.
Thank you for that, Ola and Mutsa. So Crispy African Market, go check them out. It's located on Hartzell Road in St. Catharines. I'm now going to pass it over to Tasha, who's going to display another Black-owned business, this one in Niagara Falls called Market Club.
Okay, we're here at Market Club with Sadia.
Hi, how you doing?
Hello. What's your address?
6085 Lundy's Lane.
Okay.
Off Hannon Street.
All right. In the back. The entrance is through the back.
Yes.
Okay. And you just have a grocery store here, Caribbean groceries, and lots of specialty foods. What else do you guys offer here?
We do oxtail goat.
Okay. So by the pound?
Fish, yes.
Okay.
All of those by the pound. Fish, snapper, we do callaloo, fresh from the farm, but we freeze them.
Okay.
And we do anything you like. If you like to order on Monday, we will pick it up on Tuesday. We go to Toronto every Tuesday.
Okay.
And
So
we sell barrel.
Okay.
Different sizes.
So if I needed something specific, I could just let you
Just
know?
order, yes, on Monday, and then we pick it up on Tuesday.
Okay. And you guys have an event happening?
Yes, we have a jerk fest with jerk chicken and fish.
Okay.
We have fish on the grill, and we also have escabeche, and we have jerk chicken and a drum pan.
Okay.
$10 for the jerk chicken and $15 for the fish.
And that event is happening tomorrow?
Tomorrow from 5 to 8.
Okay. Cool. That sounds great. So do you guys cater at all or?
Yes, we do catering also.
Okay. And they would just call you and maybe.
Yeah, just call us a week ahead or maybe 4 days or so ahead, and then we could help you.
That's amazing. You guys have a lot of my favorites here.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Ting.
Yeah,
Ting is the most popular drink.
I love Ting.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We also have the good sorrel drink.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And if you want to mix your own drink, old style, we have the Grace syrup.
Oh yes. I love these.
Yes.
You can make slushies at home.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Got every seasoning you could imagine.
And we have oxtail seasoning.
Okay.
So a lot of people could use oxtail seasoning instead of
all-purpose.
Yes,
Okay.
that's way better. It is so good.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have batter pack. Jamaican use batter pack or the Caribbean. And then we have goat curry powder. Oh my God! When you put that in your curry, it is so good.
It gives it
You
that
take
extra.
it back home with the goat. It's really good, you know.
Yeah.
But all the seasoning here, and if we don't see anything you like, just order, as I say, ahead of time, a week before.
That's really nice. You have patties?
Yeah, we have Tinel patties selling the pack, and it's $13 per box.
That's a great price.
Vegetable or goat, the same price.
That's a great
Yeah, so
price.
it's go fast all the time. When we buy them, it just go fast. So
Okay.
and then we, if there's any restaurant around that needs something, just call us ahead, and then
You'll get
gladly
it. So you
get
guys are
them.
distributing pretty much to
Right,
all
and
of
we
the-
have all these natural drinks. We have guava, we have sorrel, we have pineapple, we have apple, we have all of these are $15 a case.
Yeah, you can't have a nice plate without a nice drink. Right?
Yes,
you have to have a
very
nice
refreshing.
drink.
Yes.
Okay. And what's over here?
And we just have regular drinks in here. We have the DNG from back home, and then the best water is Aquafina, Fanta.
Oh, you got the cases of Fanta.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Oh, the Shirley cookies.
Yes.
Shirley.
Don't forget the Jamaican crackers.
Yeah.
And then we have few Jamaican products if you want to.
Knitted purses. And
Yes.
necklaces.
Yeah.
You gotta have these. You gotta have
And don't forget the Cersei tea and the lemongrass. You need these, and the ginger tea. These are the best tea to drink now in this coronavirus.
That'll get you through.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So I'm glad that I found you.
And then
guys.
we have Julie mango.
Oh.
It's a little high now, but you know, and then the yam. We have the. If you can't get your Caribbean pumpkin, just buy this one, the best.
And we all know it's hard to find that.
Yeah, so this have the flavor and the color. So if you're looking for a pumpkin that can't find butternut cup,
make a nice beef and pumpkin soup.
And also, as you say, pumpkin soup. We have the cow foot soup tomorrow. If you like cow foot peas, red pea strong soup, just come by tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, technical difficulties, just realizing I was mute there. So yes, to reiterate all of that, today we've got a great vendor market for the Black-owned Niagara. Black-owned 905 is helping us host that. Additionally, if you visit the Matter of Black Niagara Instagram page, you will see that we have a giveaway. The giveaway is for some great contributions given from the different Black-owned vendors in the Niagara region. And yeah, we're looking to give away to one of our lucky viewers. If you take a picture of yourself out celebrating Emancipation Day by way of having a picnic or by supporting one of our vendors by making a purchase, then that is a fantastic way to enter this giveaway and yeah, win some wonderful prizes for supporting Emancipation Day STC. Up next, we have Rochelle Bush. She is the owner and proprietor of and primary guide of Tubman Tours Canada. She is a freedom seeker descendant born and raised in St. Catharines, and she has deep roots in this community. Her maternal two-times grandfather was the minister in charge of the Salem Chapel for a period of time when Harriet Tubman was a member. Over 20 years ago, Rochelle began to preserve, promote, and protect Canada's rich Black history. This included participating in the development of early Black history narrative and government tourism initiatives in St. Catharines and around the Niagara region of Ontario. While doing such, Rochelle began to offer step-on guide services to showcase Niagara's Freedom Trail and enhance the visitor experience. Almost 10 years ago, she created the Harriet Tubman Tour to highlight the heroic figure and her time in St. Catharines. Rochelle Bush is an extremely passionate and knowledgeable person. We're going to turn to her for a tour of the Niagara Black history.
Happy Emancipation Day, everybody. My name is Rochelle Bush, and I'm a trustee and the church historian for the Salem Chapel British Methodist Episcopal Church, Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad National Historic Site. It is an honor for me to participate in the 186th Emancipation Day celebration. Right now, we're standing outside of the back entrance of the Salem Chapel. It's an honor for me to participate in the 186th annual Emancipation Day. I also want to make note that I'm the owner and operator of Tubman Tours Canada. This level is dedicated to our most famous member, Harriet Tubman. And right now, I'd like to take you for a walk around the lower level. What we have here is a display that indicates our position about the history of the Underground Railroad. So, The Underground Railroad is legendary. We all know about that. People of African descent who were enslaved in the United States were self-liberated. They connected themselves with a secret network of people who operated the Underground Railroad in order to find freedom. The Underground Railroad network would help pilot freedom seekers to the free northern states as well as to Canada. Many people put down roots in various parts of Canada West, my family included. My connection to the Salem Chapel is that my 2 times great-grandfather was minister in charge for a period of time when Harriet Tubman was here. My great-grandfather was living as a free black in South Carolina. He arrived here in 1838. He was only 26 years old as a traveling AME minister. After the United States government passed the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act, he returned to collect his wife and his children, and they put down roots here in St. Catharines. So getting back to the first disclaimer that I mentioned about the Underground Railroad, the Underground Railroad was a secret network of people. It was a secret society, and it was illegal activity. Those that participated in the Underground Railroad were breaking the law. If caught, they could be returned to slavery. Free blacks I'm speaking about. White people could be imprisoned. They could lose their property. They could lose their finance. So a lot of people were putting themselves at risk during this time. This disclaimer indicates that we stand with the history of the Underground Railroad when it was written. So I'm talking about the 19th century, because a lot of it is based on oral history. Scholars today who are documenting these accounts, they have to go by their standard and discipline, which means they can only agree and support most times with what is on paper. I say that because the narrative of Harriet Tubman has changed. Prior to 2004, her narrative used to be she guided 300 people to Canada. She made 11 rescue missions from St. Catharines, going back to Maryland, guiding people to St. Catharines. In 2004, when scholars began to research, they found out and they determined and they believe that she guided 70 people and instructed 70 people. She gave them directions as to how to make it to St. Catharines. Well, going back to the Underground Railroad being unlawful activity, we can't support that. We support both. So we are thankful for what the scholars have produced today, but we also support what our ancestors and others said during that time, primarily because Harriet Tubman never argued against it. This is her first reward poster. In 1849, she learned that she was going to be sold off. She was born Araminta Ross. Her nickname was Minty. She was married in 1849. She determined that if she was going to be separated from her family, it would be on her terms and conditions, not her enslavers. So she escaped. This wanted poster indicates that she was escaping with 2 brothers. They did so. They were away from their enslaver's home, which we call the plantation, for a couple of weeks. Then they decided, you know what? They wanted to go back home. Harriet Tubman, of course, resisted, but they made her return anyways. The brother did that because they were separating from their families. That was a difficult thing to do for enslaved people. When they were told that they were going to be sold off, that meant they would be separated from their loved ones forever and never see them again. When Tubman learned afterwards, when they returned back to the plantation, that she was going to be sold off as a single individual, she made the determination to escape on her own. Her husband, John Tubman, at the time, did not want to go north with her, and he didn't support her idea of freedom. So again, she was married to a free black man. She was enslaved. The wanted poster in 1849 for the capture of her and her 2 brothers, their value was $100 apiece. We're just going to move a little bit forward. She escaped in 1849 and she settled in Philadelphia. While she was living there, the U.S. government passed the Fugitive Slave Bill. From its early beginning, enslavers, along with the United States government, constantly protested about the provisions in the United States Constitution. A clause that was put forth in the 1793 Constitution indicated that any fugitives or runaways would be returned to their enslaver, their slave master. So Harriet Tubman was living in Philadelphia as a free Black person when the US government passed the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act. This act meant that slave catchers, bounty hunters, law enforcement, US Marshals would have the freedom to roam around the free northern states. It became a haven for slave catchers to capture people who may have been runaway slaves or alleged to be runaway slaves. So it was a simple accusation. That's all that was needed. People of African descent would be captured, tried, convicted without a judge and a jury, and returned to slavery. But there were incidents where free Black people, such as the story of Solomon Northrop, 12 years a slave. He was a free Black man. He was born free, and he was kidnapped, accused of being a runaway or a fugitive, and enslaved for the first time. White people who were living in the free northern states were now bound by law to assist slave catchers or law enforcement when it came to the apprehension of people who were accused of being fugitives. This, of course, upset many because they had the ability to live in the northern states freely and ignore what was happening in the southern states. And what I mean by that is the enslavement of people of African descent. So it wasn't right up under their nose, so they turned a blind eye to it. Now the change in the law with the Fugitive Slave Act forced them to pay attention. And in addition, they were bound by law, and if they didn't participate or they refused to assist, they could be tried, convicted, jailed, imprisoned, right? Or fined. So that was their punishment. So that law really riled white people in the North as well. Because of that law, free Black people started to relocate primarily to Canada West. Harriet Tubman herself, a year later, escaped to Canada. This here, notice, indicates that Harriet Tubman, it's her first rescue. In 1849, when she was living in Philadelphia, she learned that her niece, Keziah Boley, was going to be sold on the Cambridge auction block. Tubman decided that she would return to Maryland in aid in her rescue, and she did. So she brought Keziah and her 2 children to Philadelphia. A year later, December 1851, she escapes with 11 freedom seekers and settles in St. Catharines. That's a well-documented account. Scholars today believe that notations in Frederick Douglass's biography, where it indicates that he sheltered 11 freedom seekers, they believe it was the same incident. They believe that Harriet Tubman stopped at his home in Rochester, New York, with 11 freedom seekers before she arrived in St. Catharines. This is a picture of one of the members of our Black community, an unknown individual. And this a picture, as well as many others that are in the lower level here, are held at the Special Collections Department at Brock University. So Frederick Douglass, I'll make mention of him again as we walk around the lower level. This is an image of, actually a drawing that was in Ebony magazine in the 1970s, and it depicts Harriet Tubman with 11 freedom seekers crossing the first suspension bridge in the Niagara Falls area. And this is a picture of that suspension bridge. So this bridge and this crossing predates the construction of the Whirlpool suspension bridge. Actually, it was called the Railroad Suspension Bridge, which is now located at the lower level Whirlpool Bridge. This is an 1852 map of St. Catharines. And if you look at it closely, it identifies some of the street names that are different than they are today. This, of course, is a picture of Harriet Tubman, the old courthouse in downtown St. Catharines, which was used for a lot of abolitionist activities, and I'll address that as well. This display here is about the 1852 Militia Day riot. A parade was taking place in 1852, so visualize this. Tubman is newly arrived. So it's about June. There's a parade going downtown. Black men are dressed in British military gear, red coats. Some white people didn't like that, in particular white men. So of course, they were outraged. A race riot ensued after the parade. Some of the white people, and it's awful to think about it, that's why I'm pausing, were so outraged that they burnt down our colored village. Because that's what the area was labeled, the colored village. We were on the outskirts of town, kind of segregated, so they burnt down a large portion of the colored village. A year later, the town council decided, you know what, they would finance the rebuilding or the reconstruction of this neighborhood. And they did, which was great. William Hamilton Merritt, the father of transportation, He had many businesses. He was a member of parliament, but more importantly, he's one of the primary benefactors for the Black community. The property that we are on was sold to the Black community, the congregational members of the AME church at the time, for £5. Zion Baptist Church labeled him the benefactor of the Black community. He was a strong abolitionist, a leading abolitionist, and to me, he was Niagara's #1 white male abolitionist. This is part of the 2 images of the canal, the early canal, the first Welland Canal. This display here is about Mary Ann Shadd Cary. She became the first female publisher of African descent in North America. She was a staunch abolitionist. She was an educator. She was a teacher. She lived in southwestern Ontario, but she traveled to St. Catharines on numerous occasions because her sister was living here, her sister Amelia, who was married to an entrepreneur, David Williamson, who was a jeweler in St. Catharines. David Williamson actually had a jewelry business on St. Paul Street here in St. Catharines. So Mary Ann Shadd, she was the publisher and she published the Provincial Freeman. So this is information about a few of her publications, and they speak to what she said about St. Catharines. Here you'll see that she says that St. Catharines was riddled with Negrophobia. Sure, Canada was a gateway to freedom. We had our rights here. So my ancestors had their rights here. They could have housing without discrimination. They could go to court. They could take somebody to court if they chose to. They could vote. They had many liberties here that they did not have in the United States. But that did not prevent discrimination. It did not prevent or stop prejudice in the area. And when Mary Ann Shadd came here, she thought, you know what? There's something wrong with this picture. This town is riddled with Negrophobia. And she wrote an article about it, alerting people about the conditions in St. Catharines. So you had white abolitionists who were very good here in the city or the town at the time, and you had a lot of racist individuals who did not want Black folks in this area. That's just one article. She also addresses the school board system. She said that it was nothing but Negro haters who were preventing Blacks from having a formal education. And she railed against that on several occasions. This is Samuel Ringgold Ward, who was also one of her colleagues. And he too was a staunch abolitionist. And when he arrived in St. Catharines in 1854, he said it was the most Yankee town in Canada. So this is a picture of Harriet Tubman's brother, William Henry Stewart. He arrived with Harriet Tubman and 2 other brothers in 1854. This is a famous rescue. It was called the Raid on Christmas, and it actually included 10 freedom seekers. So Harriet Tubman guided 10 people, including her 3 brothers, to St. Catharines in December 1854. So this is about their rescue mission, because it's not all about Harriet Tubman and the people she rescued. We have other notations on display to indicate those that arrived without Tubman. And one such person is Adam Nicholson. Adam Nicholson escaped from Virginia and made it to St. Catharines in April 1854. He put down roots here in the Grantham area, which was another outskirt of the town. So this colored village was here, and it was part of St. Catharines. The Grantham Township was on the outskirts of the area. So it was about 3 miles out, and there they were predominantly farmers. So Adam Nicholson actually settled there first, and a couple of years later, Harriet Tubman's brother settled close by him. A white abolitionist by the name of Benjamin Drew arrived in St. Catharines in the spring of 1855. Abolitionists in the United States, so the free northern states, were outraged because a book was published. It was called The South Side View of Slavery. It was a justification about the enslavement of people of African descent. So it was their reasoning why it was okay to enslave Black people. Drew, a staunch abolitionist, decided to challenge their claims, and he wrote a book called The North Side View of Slavery. He came here to St. Catharines and he interviewed Harriet Tubman and her 3 brothers. And this is her narrative that was included in that 1856 publication. In this account that was delivered from St. Catharines is Tubman's most famous quote that is used frequently by people, where she indicates that she thinks slavery is the next thing to hell. So it says right here, I think slavery is the next thing to hell. And when you look at the Confederate monument today in Virginia, the Robert E. Lee one, you will see that the Black Lives Matter movement often projects an image of an individual on the statue. Most times it is about Harriet Tubman, It states that, quote, right now it's about Representative John Lewis and his passing. So here, this is about William Still. He was one of the leading Underground Railroad agents in Philadelphia. In 1855, he took a tour of Canada West. It was supposed to be sponsored by the New York Tribune, but nobody can find those accounts. Of course, if he was touring Canada West, he would have interviewed people here in St. Catharines. So the closest connection we have to him communicating with people in St. Catharines other than Harriet Tubman is this broadside that's housed at Brock University. It's part of the Rick Bell collection. And right on the side, he says he's telling one of the Bell ancestors to say hello to his friends in St. Catharines. This display here is about the Welland House Hotel. It was constructed using the labor of freedom seekers, fugitive slaves, those that arrived by way of the Underground Railroad. I point out this hotel for two reasons. Number one, built predominantly by African-American freedom seekers. And number two, St. Catharines was a major tourist attraction. We had many things going on here. Tourism was one of them, so that helped support the economy. Those that were visiting were slaveholders. Many would flock to this area, especially after the 1850 Fugitive Slave Law passed. And that's because they really weren't welcome in the free northern states. There, many of them were abused. They complained about being beat up because they were bringing their enslaved people with them. In the free northern states, a lot of enslaved people were coerced into separating from their enslaver and escaping to freedom. So that's why many of them decided they'd bypass the free northern states and venture to Canada. So when southern white folks arrived in St. Catharines, they were not with the people they were enslaving. Here we have some more information about another arrival, but I want to go to the suspension bridge. This is where Harriet Tubman crossed, and it's the only documented crossing point for her entering Canada. Where she crossed prior to 1855, we don't know. Maybe the lower suspension bridge, Queenston-Lewiston, or perhaps Buffalo Black Rock. There's no documented accounts. So from Buffalo Black Rock, she would be crossing into Ontario. So those are just anybody's best guess. So those are for the rescue missions that predate 1855. What we do know, after 1855, she rode the train. Back then, they called it cars. Her only documented account crossing that area speaks to her amazement about Niagara Falls. In this rescue mission, she's piloting Joe Bailey, his brother, William, and another gentleman by the name of Peter Pennington. It would normally take Harriet Tubman and her passengers, when they were escaping, a day or two to get out of Maryland and make it to Wilmington, Delaware. With Joe Bailey and this rescue, it took 2 weeks. The reward for Peter Pennington was high. Joe Bailey's brother was about $300, but Joe Bailey was a prized enslaved black man. The reward for him in the state of Maryland was $1,500. Out of state, $2,000. That amount was astronomical at the time. Everybody was after him. Law enforcement, slave catchers, bounty hunters. 2 weeks they were hiding in Maryland, in potato holes. A lot of people would not shelter them because the rewards were so high. But Tubman, because she believed in the Lord, prayed up on it, and she was successful. They managed to make it to Delaware. They made it to Philadelphia, where William Still put them on the train and pushed them right through to New York City. When you were working on the Underground Railroad, the rule was say nothing. At the stations, if the individual was in hot pursuit, the rule was to say nothing. When they arrived in New York City, they stopped at the Anti-Slavery Society. One of the people who was working there, and it was either Oliver Johnson or Sidney Howard Gay, had the audacity to show Joe Bailey his reward poster, because Joe Bailey had a distinct look. He had a scar on the left side of his face. Joe Bailey, of course, could not read or write. That was denied to any person who was enslaved in the United States. Harriet Tubman herself could not read or write. They were denied an education. But when he looked at the visual image of himself, he knew that bounty hunters were after him. So now he's in New York City. His first question was, how long is it going to take to get to that suspension bridge? They explained to him, and they even showed him a map. Joe Bailey was fearful. He wanted to turn back. He actually wanted to return to slavery. because he was so afraid of being captured, whipped and abused, or perhaps killed, or at the very least a foot cut off or, maimed in some manner. The other two wanted to continue, and of course, Harriet Tubman, who was known as Moses at the time, she was not turning back. Joe Bailey had to get on that train, and he did, from New York City all the way to Suspension Bridge. So we're talking almost a day's journey. He sat hunched over with his face in his hands. He was so fearful. In the meantime, others along the route, Syracuse, New York, they had to bypass it because there was no money for them to fund the Underground Railroad. So the Underground Railroad was funded. People would pool their money together to either shelter individuals, give them food, or give them money so they could continue their journey. Well, a lot of people were tapped out at the time. Harriet Tubman managed to get him to Suspension Bridge. And when I said earlier that she marveled at Suspension Bridge, in this only documented account, they're now crossing the bridge on a slow crawl, and Tubman's telling him, Joe, look at the falls, and he would still not look. They're in the middle of the bridge, gives you a clear view of the falls, and she's telling him, Joe, look at the falls, and he would not. So they got to the Canadian side. They're now on British soil. They're free. Joe Bailey's out of the train, so he's off the car, and he's screaming. He's praising the Lord. Thank you. Now he's free. And Tubman says, the least you could have done was look at the falls. In the town of St. Catharines, at the time of Harriet Tubman, North Street was considered the Broadway of the colored village. St. Paul Street, of course, was the Broadway of the entire town. So throughout the displays, you will see images, old images of St. Paul Street. Harriet Tubman was also paid for hire, and we know this because there's an 1856 account of her here in St. Catharines. A black male who was once enslaved and fled from bondage approached her and asked her to go back to the U.S. to rescue his fiancée. Her name was Tilly. Tubman agreed to do that because he was paying. She went back to Maryland, couldn't find Tilly because even though the instructions were put out in advance, and that could be done because the communication network was strong and people used telegraphs at the time. So when Tubman reached her destination on the date that was scheduled, Tilly was nowhere to be found. The safe house that Tubman went to, the people living there told her Tilly was too frightened, so she took off. So now Tubman has to search for Tilly. When she finds her, she's a nervous wreck. Tubman decides, you know what? There's rewards for Tilly. Slave catchers are everywhere. So she devised a new plan. Instead of traveling north to freedom, they boarded a boat and traveled south and went around Maryland. And they were impersonating free black women. That allowed them to escape to St. Catharines. Tubman was known to give, a lot of people instructions. This is a picture of the Cambridge 8. So this incident took place in October and November of 1857. The total number of people that escaped, she didn't guide them, is 44. So 2 different occasions. And this picture was included in William Still's book, The Underground Railroad. So after the Civil War, William Still, who used to document all the accounts of the individuals who arrived at his station, who had escaped from slavery, he would collect their narratives. And after the Civil War in 1872, he published them. And included in that publication is this depiction of the Cambridge 8 that Tubman is known to have aided. So I mentioned earlier that the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act upset a lot of white people who were living in the free states. One of those white people was John Brown, greatest white abolitionist to ever live. He was a staunch abolitionist, so much to the point that he decided he was going to devise a plan to overthrow slavery. In 1858, he met with Frederick Douglass in Rochester, New York, and there he began to write out his provisional constitution, what the rules would be after he overtook the government. By April, he was here and he was meeting Harriet Tubman. He met with her and a group of the people that she had rescued, so black males. Her parents were here at the time, so of course, she would have included her father and her 3 brothers in that group, plus a number of other men. Harriet Tubman agreed to go with him when it was time to overtake a federal arsenal in Harpers Ferry, Virginia. So John Brown was here for a total of 10 days. Then he moved on to Ingersoll and then Chatham, where he completed his address to the Black community, Black males, about his wanting to overtake the government and, of course, completing the Provisional Constitution. Once all that was done, the document was sent back here to St. Catharines, where William Howard Day, who was educated at Oberlin College, he was a great orator, and of course, he could read or write, and he was a printer. He published them from this location for John Brown. While this was happening, one of his trusted friends, John Brown's, one of his trusted friends by the name of Hugh Forbes decided, you know what? He wanted more money from John Brown. And his role in this group or this party was to train individuals who would join John Brown in military combat. Well, Hugh Forbes wanted more money because they were short of money. Hugh Forbes decided, you know what? I'm going to rat you out. He wrote letters about John Brown's plans, and thank God he wrote those letters to white abolitionists. Some were American politicians, others were newspaper publishers. What he did not do was write to Southerners or Southern congressmen and let them know about John Brown's plans. Nevertheless, that frightened many people, so they put the plans on hold. It should have occurred, the overthrow of Harper's Ferry, in the summer of 1858. It did not. It did not occur until October 16, 1859. Because of the time that was in between both dates, many people who were in support of John Brown and said that they would assist him, they didn't show up when it was time for the attack. Tubman did not show up. They indicate that she was nowhere to be found. Some say she was in New Bedford. Tubman herself said that she was in New York City. So a lot of people weren't aware. Plus, the date changed. It was supposed to take place on October 27th when it actually occurred on October 16th. There were many people that John Brown was communicating with who were telling him, you know, it wasn't such a great plan and do not do it. One of those people was Frederick Douglass. So he met John Brown a month earlier before the raid on Harper's Ferry. And Frederick Douglass told him, I cannot be here to assist you. I would hope that you would reconsider. John Brown would not, so Frederick Douglass wished him well with his plans. John Brown was captured on October 16, 1859. He had 21 men with him. 5 were men of African descent, so black males, 1 Canadian. On December 2nd, John Brown was hung for treason. He was a great humanitarian, and he went out swinging. He said he would do it again if he was given that opportunity, because he was against slavery and he wanted it to come to an end. So the number one question about Harriet Tubman is, what did she do in St. Catharines? There's not a lot of documentation. As I indicated earlier, we know that she was paid for hire. We know where she lived, in a boarding house with her elderly parents. And that was, on North Street, just behind the church. So we know that she operated a boarding house. That's where her parents were living with her, and she sheltered fugitive slaves. There's a possibility that she even worked in the hotel industry, because that's what she did in Philadelphia and Cape May, New Jersey. There's just no documentation. There's an account of her saying that she worked in the hotels in Philadelphia. There's an account saying that she was in Cape May, but there's no account of what she did here. She would have had to have survived. So we know that that opportunity was available for her, the employment opportunity. This entire display here is about Harriet Tubman and the people she was connected with during the Underground Railroad. I said before that I was going to mention Frederick Douglass again. Here he is right here. So Harriet Tubman's journey. She would start point anywhere in Maryland, sometimes Baltimore. Didn't necessarily mean Baltimore. Wilmington, Delaware, where she would connect and receive assistance from Thomas Garrett. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, William Still. Then we have New York City, where there would have been Oliver Johnson, Sidney Howard Day. Albany, New York, where she would receive assistance from Stephen Myers. Then, of course, Syracuse, New York, Jermaine Logan, who was a frequent visitor here to St. Catharines, Frederick Douglass in Rochester, and then Hiram Wilson here in St. Catharines. There's no image of Hiram Wilson. He was a white man here at the time when Harriet Tubman lived here in St. Catharines, and he was the person that all these other individuals communicated with. There was on occasion where individuals who were escaping, including Harriet Tubman, would stop in Elmira, New York, and they would receive assistance from John Jones. The reason this is up here is Frederick Douglass, in his account of his 1881 biography, states all the locations that I mentioned, and he states St. Catharines, Canada West, as being the last stop of the Underground Railroad terminus that he was connected with. And all I can say is, thank you, Brother Douglass, for putting us on the map and making it known. This is an image of William Wells Brown. He also was a frequent visitor to St. Catharines, so there's about 4 documented accounts of him being in this area. In 1860, he wrote for the Palm and Pine an account about the colored village here in St. Catharines, saying that, you know what, they had their own homesteads, all paid for, so no mortgages. Some were farmers, some were entrepreneurs, some were omnibus drivers. So he pretty much told a story about the Black community here in St. Catharines. I mentioned earlier about what Harriet Tubman did. There was one other thing that she did that was equally important. She established a fugitive aid society here in St. Catharines, and that was to shelter individuals and help them along their way. Some remained here in St. Catharines and others moved on. So she did this shortly before the Civil War. And this image here depicts that, and here's members of that committee. What I found out in researching some of the members is that after the Civil War, we know that a lot of people returned to their homestead. So they were now free to go back to the United States and look for their loved ones. Some did that, some settled in the South again. But others, based on this research, and I'm speaking about Horatio Wilkinson, he decided that, you know what, I'll relocate to Chicago. So from that account, tracing his history, I found out that many others here, they did not go back to the South in search of their families. A lot of them moved to major cities in the US, such as Chicago and New York. Some moved to Philadelphia. So this is the newest picture of Harriet Tubman. It was discovered a few years ago. One of her colleagues, a friend, Emily Howland, had it in her collection. When it was discovered, of course, there was a lot of excitement. It was purchased along with a number of other photographs, and it is now in the, I can't say ownership because it's part of the public domain, but the Library of Congress is part owner, as well as the African American Museum, the Smithsonian in the United States. So that's the picture of Harriet Tubman. And that was taken anywhere between 5 and 7 years after she left St. Catharines. So she was a tiny woman, very tiny, petite, and very, very graceful. You can see that. It's a stark contrast to her being the Moses of her people and the fierce, courageous woman who was going back to Maryland to guide people to freedom here in St. Catharines. This is about her passing in Auburn, New York. So after she left St. Catharines, she moved to Auburn, New York. That's where she settled. She remained there until she died on March 10th, 1913. One obituary, Canadian obituary for Harriet Tubman, and that was written by Reverend Ball. Reverend Ball was a young man living here in St. Catharines when she was the Moses of her people. St. Catharines didn't write an account for her, so he did it from Toronto, and this is her only Canadian account. When she passed, she still had 5 descendants here living in the St. Catharines area and 1 in Cayuga, and they are listed on her last will and testament. This is about Zion Baptist Church because we weren't the only Black church here in St. Catharines. Zion Baptist Church's most famous member is Reverend Anthony Burns. In 1854, he escaped from slavery in Virginia, made it to Boston, and under that 1850 fugitive slave law, he made the mistake of acknowledging his slaveholder who was in hot pursuit. So his enslaver confronts him on the street, Burns acknowledges him, then he's arrested, taken to the courthouse. As luck would have it, Henry Dana, leading abolitionist, a white male at the time, is in the courthouse, and he decides he'll defend Burns. Riotings break out. The Liberty Bell was rung. People are trying to free Burns. It doesn't happen. A U.S. Marshal was shot. It took the government 5 days to calm the rioting. People in Boston, who were known to be staunch abolitionists, would drape coffins in black and hang them from their places of business, and then liberty laws were enforced. But with Burns, he was returned to slavery. So now we have 22 members of law enforcement, whether they're part of the cavalry, U.S. Marshals, local police, slave catchers, on horseback with guns, rifles, shotguns, trying to calm the rioters so that his enslaver could take him to the boat, put him on board a ship, and sail him back to Virginia. Now he's in Virginia. He's enslaved once again. His friends in Boston never forgot him. They tried to purchase his freedom. His enslaver said no. He was tired of being harassed by the white abolitionists, the Yankees in Boston, so he, in turn, sold Burns to another enslaver in North Carolina. His friends in Boston decided, okay, we'll fix you. They hatched a plan. Got a white man to pretend he was a Southerner, gave him $1,200. He went to North Carolina and purchased Burns with abolitionist gold. That's what they called it at the time, abolitionist money. So they tricked him. Burns is now back in Boston. He's traveling to New York City. P.T. Barnum of the Barnum and Bailey Circus. At the time, he owned a museum. It was called the New York Museum. The New York American Museum, excuse me. He offers Burns $100 to tell his story on the lecture circuit. And Burns said, no, you're not parading me around like a monkey, and I'm not telling my story next to the Siamese twins, the bearded lady, and all these other carnival freaks of nature, because that's what the museum was. So he accepted an offer from a white woman who was a Quaker abolitionist. He went to Oberlin College, studied theology. After he received his degree, he moved on to Indiana. They found out, white folks there found out it was Anthony Burns. They thought he would agitate the free blacks, and they forced him out based on their black codes. Zion Baptist Church was without a pastor. He arrived in St. Catharines in 1860. Zion Baptist Church was in financial ruin. He turned all that around. He became a revered member of the community. 2 years later, he died. He was very ill. He passed on at the age of 28. His plaque was erected by these white men, these gentlemen. They were part of St. Catharines Lincoln Historical Society in 1964, along with the stewardess of the Zion Baptist Church, Clara Bell Williams. They were without a minister, so our minister stepped in, Reverend Francis. That's how Burns is remembered. The white males of the St. Catharines Lincoln Historical Society in 1964 did not want to forget about him. And his plaque is one of the first plaques in Ontario to be dedicated to a person of African descent. Again, I want to say it was an honor for me to participate in this 186th Emancipation Day event. So I want to give a shout out to Matter of Black and Black Owned 905 and all other supporters of this event. Again, it's an honor for me to represent the Salem Chapel as a trustee and the church historian. And I also want to let you know one more time that I am the owner and operator of Tubman Tours Canada. What we did today is just a glimpse in what I do for the tours. Upstairs, the church has a lot of artifacts, a lot of memorabilia that you'd be able to look at. And on my tour, we go out throughout the downtown core where we're talking about white abolitionists. We're looking at a lot of the historic sites here in St. Catharines. And my tour is a little bit different. It is off the beaten path because we include the enslavers that were here in Niagara. We include the enslaved people that were here in Niagara. And more importantly, my tours are fact-checked in real time. Stay away from a lot of the oral history because you cannot really speak to that. And people want to be able to fact-check in real time. Again, thank you for listening and happy Emancipation Day.
I won't fear the night. Praise His name. Name of Jesus. Name of grace.
Hello. Wow. Thank you, Shelley. That was amazing. Every time you speak, I'm amazed. And, you know, I've heard you speak a lot. Thank you. I'd like to introduce a tribute to Ruth Harper Bell, which is my great-grandmother.
Ruth Harper Bell came from a long line of freedom seeker descendants who settled in the Niagara area. Born and raised in St. Catharines during World War I, She was baptized as a baby at the Salem Chapel BME Church and married by the age of 19. Ruth always felt compelled to keep her family and community together. She was active in the church, joined the Order of the Eastern Star, and stood in solidarity with her community to combat racism and discrimination. As an avid storyteller and family genealogist, Ruth Bell always told stories about the thousands of Black people that traveled from other parts of Ontario and many areas in the United States to converge on the first Thursday in August to celebrate Emancipation Day at Port Dalhousie. She often said Black people would celebrate all month long with small family gatherings and large community events. When the big picnic at Lakeside Park drew to a close in the 1960s, it was no surprise to Ruth's family and friends when she announced that she was going to continue organizing the annual event. The second Saturday in August became the new celebration date. In St. Catharines, for over 30 years, Ruth Bell coordinated the Emancipation Day reunion at Port Dalhousie. Ruth Bell maintained a kind, youthful spirit throughout her life and was often referred to as a social butterfly. Family history was important to her. Emancipation Day to Ruth Harper Bell was not only a day to remember and celebrate her courageous ancestors, it was also the day to bring her family and community group together so that they would never forget. My grandmother Ruth really made the Emancipation Day picnic something to look forward to every year. Growing up, it was always the highlight of my summer. My grandmother was always the first person I would see as soon as we entered the pavilion at Lakeside Park. She would greet her family with a hug and a kiss, and of course give all of the children a nickel to ride the famous carousel. I'm so happy and honored to be working with a group of community leaders to bring back Emancipation Day in Niagara. I think my grandmother would truly be proud.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to introduce you to our next vendor. If you're looking for hair product, if you're looking for hair extension, if you're looking to add some flavor to your food, if you're looking for a Caribbean and an African product, check out Afro-Caribbean Variety Food Market.
Okay, we are at Afro-Caribbean Variety Food Market located on McLeod Road in Niagara Falls. The hours of operation right here. Oh, they have a little bit of everything here. Hair. I know we are always looking where to buy hair. So they got a little bit of everything, it looks like. And we have the lovely Sophia.
Hi, guys.
Sophia, how long have you been here?
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
We sell everything, food stuff like oxtail, goat meat.
But to buy
and cook
at home.
Yeah,
Okay.
take home and cook. And we braid, we do extension.
Oh, you do hair
Yes,
here?
I do haircuts and I sell extensions.
Wow.
Good price. You know, we can help for everything. It's all varieties we sell.
And there's lots of
creams, soap.
This is stuff you certainly cannot get at any other stores.
Lots soap, you know, anything you want to just come and check it out.
So you sell African products as well as Caribbean.
Caribbean
Okay.
food, yeah.
Okay. What's your name?
Jonathan.
Jonathan. Nice to meet you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Look, they have everything. Do-rags and brushes.
Yam.
Yam.
Goat head cut.
Goat head?
Yeah, goat head,
Okay.
goat feet.
Goat feet.
Cow skin, cow, you know, have everything. Ox skin.
Wow. I you know what? I did not know you guys were here. I'm from St. Catharines, but I'm so
People come from American, they come from Buffalo, from here.
I bet, because you guys have a
Greensby, everything.
you have a lot of things, and I'm so happy to know that you're here.
Jamaican patties, now.
You sell the tonals by the box.
Yes.
How much for a box of tonals?
$15.
15. That's a great price. And tonals are the best ones. So you have all different things here. Can I open the freezer? Wow.
Yes.
Look at this. Goat meat. Saltfish. Good prices too. Look. Everything. Smoked turkey?
Yes.
Wow.
We have fresh turkey, smoked turkey.
Oxtail. Cow skin.
Yeah.
Scotch bonnet, okra. The tonals patties.
Yeah.
Flour, cornmeal.
Yam, negro yam.
Yam. Plantain. Lots of different spices.
Oh yes. This soup, soup, egusi soup,
Yeah.
egusi, draw soup, pepper soup spice. We have suya spice.
Wow.
This palm oil. You know, Indomie. You know.
Everything.
Yes, sister, yes.
And then show me the salon.
Yeah.
You guys are busy here.
Oh yeah. We're just today because tomorrow they have a lot of appointments. Today is a little bit slow, but you know we have wigs and
Wigs.
you know.
Ladies, come get your wigs.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I am so happy I stumbled upon this place here. What is the address?
8240 McLeod Road.
8240 McLeod Road.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the snapper?
Snapper.
Snapper
It's
by the
clean.
case.
Yeah, it's
We have
It's cleaned already.
How much for a case?
$60. They can buy half. They can buy quarters. It doesn't matter.
Wow, this is a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
This is a one-stop shop.
I'm like Walmart. Go
Yeah.
anything you want.
The Afro-Caribbean
Yeah.
Walmart.
Yes. We have to help each other. You know?
That's what
Yeah.
it is.
We have to teamwork.
Teamwork.
Yeah.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Yes.
Very nice people. Sophia and Jonathan. Lovely people. Come visit them. All right, you want to say bye?
Bye, everybody. I'm expecting you guys to come and check it out. You know, God bless.
God bless.
Good afternoon, friends. This is Annie Wilson here, the programming supervisor for the FirstOntario Performing Arts Centre. This has been an enriching and deeply gratifying morning and afternoon so far. It's been such a pleasure to work with Matter of Black and Black Owned 905 on pulling together these Emancipation Day celebrations. It's been so great to learn more about the Black-owned businesses in our community. We've got some shopping to do today, friends, and please be sure to use the hashtag Emancipation Day STC so we can all follow along. I was deeply moved by both of our Rochelle speakers that we've had so far today. I've learned so much about our history that I didn't know, and I'm seeing the comments coming in from our viewers who are saying the same things. These are stories I was not told. This is not in our history books. And so I am very grateful that we have this opportunity to share and to learn and to be together today. I personally believe that it is critical that we learn the terrible truths of our history. Black, Indigenous, and people of color have been marginalized for centuries and more. And it is our collective responsibility to take action for a better world that's free from racism and oppression. I hope that today and the work that we're doing together is another step toward that. So I've popped on to share the good word about a few performances that we have at the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre. In partnership with Matter of Black and Black-owned 905, we are presenting concerts. So this afternoon, this evening at 5 p.m. and again at 7 p.m., we will have a concert with OCAN and the backyard of the Performing Arts Centre. They're an incredible group. So if you can get there, I highly recommend it. They're Juno-nominated, Independent Music Award-winning Afro-Cuban roots and jazz band. And I had the pleasure of seeing them a while back, and we knew that they would be a really great addition to this celebration. This is the first time it's a foray into opening up our space again and gathering in person as a community. And so we have all sorts of safety protocols. We want to make sure that our patrons and our artists are very safe. So we'll be wearing masks, and our staff will be able to assist you in ensuring that health and safety is upkept at all times while we're enjoying these performances in the backyard. And then tomorrow evening, you'll see me again at 7:30 p.m. and I will be joined by the organizers of this incredible weekend. And we will be sharing a Niagara performance, a special Emancipation Day style with the LMT Connection. And that's featuring the legendary Motown frontman, Leroy Emanuel. So again, getting ready to boogie. I wanted to take this opportunity to personally thank Mutsa, the Ericas, I should say, Erica Smith and Erica Williams, Rachel, Bowie, and Jada, for your passion and your vision to bring Emancipation Day celebrations back to the hearts of our community. It's been a real privilege for me personally to be able to work with you. And I'm already looking forward to our plans for next year. And now I'd like to share a promo video that was created by Suitcase and Point. And it's in support of a really cool project that they put together with the community, and it's sharing performances and musings from Niagara residents about Emancipation Day. They're calling it Freedom a Mixtape, and I believe it's dropping at the end of next week. They've put together a really special and beautiful promotional video, and we're very pleased to share it here with you now. Thank you.
Freedom, freedom, freedom.
Hello, everybody, and thank you again for joining us on our Emancipation Day celebration. We hope that you guys have been enjoying everything that we have been able to offer you guys today. So much history within our city that we don't really get to learn much about often. So we are just so thankful that we were able to bring this to you, and this is only the beginning. We have much, much more in store. Make sure that you go out, you go out and you support Black businesses, use the hashtag, and also we do have a giveaway. Please make sure you enter the giveaway. We have so many amazing prizes that we're giving away through these incredible partnerships that we've been able to develop through this amazing process of creating Emancipation Day. So right now we are honored to have Dr. Tamari Petoza, the professor of sociology at Brock University, and he's going to be sharing with us a little bit about Black trauma and resilience. So, Dr. Tamari?
See me well? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Tamari. Okay, you can take it away.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting me, Mutsa, to share some thoughts on the issue of trauma and resilience experienced by African people relative to the issue of slavery, but also to speak about issues of resilience. So what I've got here is I designed a brief presentation that I want to share with the audience and the community. But I need to give a very brief backstory as to why I developed the presentation this way. I think if we're dealing with trauma, one of the issues that I think there are at least three that I think are important for us as African people to address. One of them is that to actually talk about the transatlantic slavery, the trans-Saharan slavery, and the Indian Ocean slavery that saw African people being traded into the Indian Ocean, is that to actually speak about slavery itself is traumatic. And very briefly, I think this is traumatic for three reasons. One is that there's a sense of stigma and shame associated with slavery, because there is the impression that blackness and slavery go together. And this is definitely the case post 1655 in the Americas, where chattel slavery was associated quite explicitly with African people, because there were laws that were passed that ensured that if one's mother was a woman of African descent, then the offspring or the children would also be enslaved. But we can also go back a bit further to the 3rd century of the Common Era, where Judaism and Christianity associated blackness of skin with slavery. But it's important to understand that this did not really take on the sort of connotation and characterization that it did until after 1655, because one of the things that I want to show here is that slavery is a problem in human history, and that it is not explicitly a problem that is linked to blackness of skin, for which people of African descent need to be ashamed about. The second issue why I think some African people might find it traumatic is that one might experience anger when one reads about and comes to terms with the sheer brutality, the abject violence, the very sadistic nature of slavery from the Arab slave trade of Africans and the European slave trade of Africans, that this can generate feelings of anger. And that can be traumatizing, because the question is, what do you do with that, right? And so some people might want to avoid examining the experience of the transatlantic slavery and the Saharan trade and the Indian Ocean trade, because it might generate anger. And related to that is it can be associated with the anger is tremendous frustration. When you have anger and you don't have any meaningful way to address it, this can lead to frustration. And part of the frustration is that all around us, there is denial and refusal to acknowledge the vast harm that was done to Africa and to African people through some people benefiting cultures, Western European culture in particular, and North Africa and the Middle East benefiting tremendously from the enslavement of Africans, that it can be frustrating when the issue of slavery comes up and you're constantly told, oh, that's in the past. And a part of why that's frustrating is because anti-Black racism has taken over in many respects, continuing the harms of slavery. Now, the other issue is for non-African people. They might not want to address slavery for the reason that they might see it as not concerning them. So there's denial, there's indifference, there's the assumption that that was past and this is now, and that there's a refusal to recognize that the past is never past. It is always with us until we address it. And so the other part to this is that we all need to understand that the transatlantic slave trade, the trans-Saharan slave trade, the Indian Ocean slave trade, this is not simply African history. This is everybody's history. This is world history. And part of the reason why this is really important, and I'll talk very briefly about this, is that the Industrial Revolution would not have occurred without the expropriation of the labor and the surplus wealth extracted from African people, and that the African continent has yet to fully recover from the transatlantic slave trade. And I'll briefly explain why that is the case. So if, Dean, if you could move to slide number 2, please. And Dean, could you actually enlarge it so that the whole screen is taken up rather than having the panel on the side? It disappears and we have the full PowerPoint, and then I'll just direct you through each slide. Okay, so that might be an issue, so I'll just move on. All right, so pertaining to some of the issues that I just raised, I wanted to very quickly bring to attention that slavery is a human problem, and that in 6000 to 4000 BC, in the Common Era, slavery emerged as a practice in parts of the Fertile Crescent, quite specifically in southern Turkey, in a place called Çatalhöyük, and it migrated there from into various parts of the Middle East, where you have the Mesopotamian dynasties and empires, and then from there to Egypt. So that whole Fertile Crescent, where you had the emergence of proto-states, slavery pretty much emerged at about the same time. And if you read the work of Lewis Mumford, what he demonstrates is that we're looking at that particular moment in time where those groups that were engaged in hunting pretty much began to parasitize on those communities that were beginning to develop settlement and agriculture. And there's an association between slavery and the emergence of kingship. So you see, wherever you find these river communities where states emerge, be it in the Americas or in Asia and Africa, you also have the emergence of slavery also. So kingship is associated with slavery, and so too are proto-states. And proto-states are designed for the purposes of waging war. Third slide, please. So one of the interesting things about the initial development of slavery is that all males were immediately killed. So slavery was about killing all the males and then enslaving the women and absorbing them into the enslaving community. Now, some people argue that women are the archetypical form of slavery, so there is the presumption that patriarchy is associated with slavery. I would argue against this. Women could only be enslaved from various opposing groups only because the males from those groups were immediately killed. And it was only after a specific point in time when those proto-states developed their resources enough to have the quote-unquote the manpower necessary to restrain the males from the other groups. Only then were the males from those groups also enslaved. And interestingly, if you go back to the Old Testament and you go back to a lot of the archaeological evidence, even then those males, they were blinded, they were castrated, or they were hamstrung. So disabilities was also an important aspect of the development of slavery, and it was very explicitly directed at the males. So nevertheless, the emergence of slavery was about developing a surplus pool of labor from which wealth could be extracted. We also see the emergence of private property, and that land became a commodity. And so we have literally in like around 4000 BC in Mesopotamia and Egypt, we had the emergence of proto-capitalism. And this is way before Karl Marx assumed that capitalism developed. Next slide, please. So briefly then, what is slavery? And I think we need to define it. First of all, slavery is human parasitism, right? One group of people They're literally predating and parasitizing on other group of people. So we have various stereotypes that slaves are lazy, they're stupid, and so on and so forth. Well, obviously, this tells us that the people that are lazy are the ones doing the enslaving because they're getting other people to do the work from them, for them, and that they extract value from their labor. This is basically the Marxist theory of the labor theory of value. The thing about slavery is that individuals are deprived of their liberty and they're imagined not to have free will. So they're criminalized if they exercise free will in terms of thinking for themselves, resisting, all of that is criminalized. Orlando Patterson, in a really fantastic book called Slavery and Social Death, he argues that slaves are imagined as socially dead, so they can't contribute for themselves, for the economic, cultural, political, and social life of the community. All of that is taken from them for the benefit of the dominant group. And yes, next slide. One of the things essential to slavery is racism. You cannot have slavery without racism. And I want to be very clear that that racism is more and other than skin color. It could be your language. That could be the basis for racism. It could be your religion, right? It could be the geographical region that you were coming from. So slavery is more than skin color, although we have come to assume by and large that slavery is about skin color. It is also more than that. So relating then to racism, the slave is dehumanized. They're not seen as fully human being. And this goes back to the issue of social death. And the other is that they're imagined as animals, right? Non-human animals. They're animalized. In ancient Greece, they had a term for slave, which was andropoda, human-footed animal. And enslaved persons are also infantilized. They're constantly regarded as dependent, like children are dependent on adults for their care, their sustenance, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. Now, slavery in Africa. One of the issues that we have to address is typically when folks want to think about slavery, they imagine that slavery never existed in Africa. And I pointed out earlier that proto-states engaged in enslaving other groups, and that proto-states are about expropriating wealth and resources from other groups of people. And if we go back to ancient Kemet or Egypt, the pharaohs, probably beginning in the 3rd dynasty with Emperor or Pharaoh Djoser in 2600 BCE, he began raiding into the Sinai Peninsula. And when these empires, when he began to do so, that's when slaves entered Egypt at that point in time. This is meant to correct a mythology that Hebrews were enslaved in Egypt building mud brick pyramids. That is historically inaccurate. The first time that there was any mention of Hebrews in Egypt is 1500 BCE, which is 1,000 years after Emperor Djoser and after they've already started building pyramids out of stone and not mud brick. So that's a myth that needs to be corrected. The Persians and the Greeks and the Romans, when they began to conquer Egypt in about 700, 600 BCE, that's when the enslavement of African people began to be a serious issue. So you have people enslaved in ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and Persia, and you can go to the archaeological record and you can find African people on images in pottery, in various stelae and other sorts of representations. So nevertheless, slavery spread throughout Africa, subsequently, largely through the emergence of kingship elsewhere and the emergence of proto-states. Next slide, please. So I'm going to jump from antiquity now to the 7th century Common Era to the 19th century. And this is where the Arab enslavement of Africans and the Afro-Arabs and other groups such as Tuaregs and others beginning to really traffic in Africa, because Islam began to be one of the key rationalizations for the justification of Africans as infidels. And the great irony is that Islam would never have survived as a religion had it not be for the king of Ethiopia in the 6th century BCE, who gave protection to the followers of Muhammad ibn Abdullah, who were chased out of Mecca and Medina, and they were given protection by the king, the Aksumite king in Ethiopia, who protected them. And from there, Muslims were able then begin to, as a religion, began to assert itself in Saudi Arabia, and from there spread out around the world. So that began to be the point at which, from the 7th century BCE to the 19th century, where something like 9 million African people were trafficked by Arabs and Afro-Arabs to the Middle East and North Africa and beyond into places like Turkey and China. The interesting thing about the enslavement of African people by Arabs is that 2 out of every 3 person trafficked out of Africa and into North Africa were women. And the other 1 out of 3 were men, either used as eunuchs in the various empires. The emperor of the Caliph of Baghdad, for example, in the 8th century, he had something like 7,000 African men that were eunuchs and 4,000 European eunuchs. So there was a tendency to more eunuchize African males than European males. But nevertheless, most of the enslaved persons were Africans. Significantly, the death rate was extraordinarily high. And this was a very cruel trade. And so not only were there more, a significant number of people that were killed en route, we also need to factor and consider that as an issue of trauma for those who are the survivors historically, and also for those communities from which those persons were taken. The next slide, Dean. Now, the European enslavement of African people, this was also extraordinarily traumatic, but the numbers exceeded those of the Afro-Arab slave trade for a shorter period of time. So we're talking about a 400 to 500 year window, and something like 12 to 25 million people were spirited away from Africa. The number is not precise, but nevertheless, there was something like 3.5 million people that were killed from the process of raiding and capture to folks being held in the various forts in West Africa before being shipped abroad as commodities to the West. And from there, something like 2 to 3 million people were killed en route in what's called the Middle Passage. And this was such a regular practice that sharks began to follow the ships, because they knew that African people, would be either thrown aboard, or many people would try to commit suicide and jump aboard to escape being enslaved in the Americas. One of the things about the transatlantic slave trade is that many Africans thought that they were going to be eaten by the Europeans. So if you think about the whole Tarzan films, where Africans are supposed to be boiling Europeans in oil to eat them, and Mayor Mel Lastman invoked that mythology when he was mayor in Toronto, it was quite the reverse. The Africans thought that they were going to be cannibalized by the Europeans. And so this issue of the significance of the transatlantic slave trade for the development of Europe as an economic and political and military world power is examined by Eric Williams in Capitalism and Slavery, and subsequently by Walter Rodney in How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. So you can imagine that if 2 out of every 3 persons taken for the transatlantic slave trade were males, and many of them were young, skilled males, you're talking about the elimination of a major group of people with skills and knowledge and the physical capacity that would ensure the economic, political, and cultural development of Africa. And by that means also the significant loss of those people meant that the communities were left in a traumatized state of having so many people taken away under such brutal conditions. Next slide, please. So the trauma did not end there. Plantation slavery was extraordinarily brutal. There were amputations, brutalization, forced breeding, and rape, quite significant mortality, starvation, overwork, and psychological torture. All of this was necessary to ensure that other people, the African people, would work for Europeans. Next slide, please. Now, one of the things that I think is really important for us to come to terms with is that we're not simply fixated or located at the level of trauma. We're also cognizant of the fact that African people did something about this, right? The abolition of slavery by Britain in 1833, and which was signed into law and effected in 1834. And keep in mind that there was an 8-year period called the apprenticeship period. So African people still gave another 8 years of free labor. That there were revolts. People resisted. From 1655 to about 1833, Horace Campbell talks about in Rasta in Resistance that there were some 400 slave revolts and rebellions in Jamaica alone. Excuse me. So you also had the development of marronage, or these maroon communities, where African people developed their own communities and continually resisted slavery. And for those Africans that remained on the plantations, there were daily acts of resistance, going slow, feigning sickness, pretending to be stupid and not understanding what the master classes wanted. Some of them damaged property. Some of them committed suicide, and others committed infanticide. Instead of having their children grow up to be slaves, they would actually kill their infants. And there were significant issues with African women bearing children, because the nature of slavery was, in fact, so brutal that many women could not bring their children to term unless they lived on plantations where the masters made it a point to breed these women and provide them with the necessary caloric intake and so on and so forth. And I recently read a piece that demonstrated that 17% of all peoples in the Americas have the DNA of Africa flowing through their veins, precisely because so many African women were raped. Next slide, please. So this moves me to the point now of epigenics and post-traumatic slave syndrome. There's a fantastic book called by that title, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, by Dr. Joy DeGruy, where she talks about the continuity of trauma across generations. And this is what epigenics basically is. So you're talking about when you deprive people of the necessaries for maintaining themselves. African people were so much starved in parts of the southern United States that they ate clay in order to get their minerals, all right? And so this is how brutal it was. Now you can imagine that from one generation to the next, right? That sort of deprivation of minerals and vitamins and caloric intake, that would be passed on from one generation to the next. And one of the interesting things that Dr. DeGruy talks about is the way that trauma is experienced as constantly being in the fight or flight mode. And research has demonstrates that when mothers are stressed, and they found this out in World War II, particularly in the Netherlands, that the stressors in terms of harm to the infant passes on to the mothers. And those children are born either underweight or with particular infant syndromes. And one of them is that cortisol passes through the placenta from the mother to the placenta. And this affects the development of the brain of children and their capacity to develop thereafter. And part of the issue here is that cortisol, basically being in that constant fight or flight mode, literally is a hormone that attacks the body, right? Because you're constantly in that fight or flight mode. And that this has quite significant implications for mental and physical maladaptation from one generation to the next. And the final slide, please. So, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the World Psychiatry Association, it outlines the criteria for trauma. And there are four basic ways that people are traumatized. One is immediately through death, the threat of death, and the actual or threatening of serious harm, and the threat of sexual violence. All of that was built into slavery. All of that was built into the aftermath of slavery, be it in Jim Crow, in Canada, the United States, and just a continuance in the Americas, really, of the deprivation of African people based on skin color. Now, this can also be experienced through indirect means also, where people either witness it or this knowledge is passed down through from one generation to the next. There is a real significant problem of people in the African diaspora not trusting the medical establishment. And this is knowledge being passed on intergenerationally, not to trust the medical establishment, in part because the medical establishment emerged in the Americas by performing medical experimentation on African people. Every single person born alive today is a beneficiary of the experiments that Marion Sims performed on enslaved African women without anesthesia, right? So there's a good reason why African people in the Americas do not trust the medical establishment, and that this is part of the continuing trauma of the anti-Black racism, which is built into the development of various institutions. So we need to consider that public policy needs to pay serious attention to the social determinants of health in terms of the mental and physical well-being of African peoples, and that there should be high quality, accessible, and culturally appropriate services given the harms of the medical establishment historically to African people. Oh, I'm sorry. Could we move to the final slide, please? Right. So after we've come to terms with recognizing that there is trauma, that we need to move to the stage of healing. And that means ensuring that there is a public policy emphasis on the social determinants of health to address the epigenic continuities of harm to people of African descent. There needs to be high quality education to ensure that our young people understand their history and have fair and accessible means to high quality education. There should be fair and accessible means to employment that pays a meaningful wage, that there ought to be a guaranteed income, right? Where people are not struggling every single moment of their lives to worry about where their next meal is going to come from. And that there is a good and justifiable reason based on empirical evidence that people should get a guaranteed income, and that this is extraordinarily beneficial to particularly poor and marginalized people. There needs to be high quality housing and fair and accessible high quality housing. Particularly for African people in the Americas that experience food deserts, that there needs to be high quality, accessible, and fairly priced food. We need to heal the wounds and the damage of the self-esteem of slavery through ensuring that there is knowledge of self. We need to ensure that there's reparations for slavery. Britain paid out the slave masters, right, between 1834 and 1843, but they did not compensate African people. And so the issue of reparations is longstanding. As early as the 1870s in the United States and parts of the Caribbean, African people were making an argument for compensation for slavery. So reparations is not a new issue. There needs to be employment equity and affirmative action. in part because anti-Black racism ensures that there are racial stereotypes about African people, that this is part of the implicit consciousness of people in positions of authority and power to deny African people, even if they have high quality education and credentials, we're often denied fair access to employment. And the final issue, but it's not the last, is to defund the police and abolish prisons. Policing is a continuity of the slave patrols. And this is extraordinarily important to understand, that the slavery imagined African people as dangerous and threatening. And so the presumption that we're always in a position of revolt and resistance, this has been embedded into law, literally. It has been embedded into the law and the consciousness and the practices of law enforcement. And so prisons now become the new slavery. So slavery has been abolished, right, for civil society, but not for the state. And in 1873 in the United States, it was established in law that the slavery is a right of the state to enslave persons who have committed felony offenses. And we can go back to the 13th Amendment in 1865 in the United States, which also established that slavery is fitting punishment except for where persons have violated the law. So we have the means by which we can address the traumas of slavery and its continuity. And I think we need to begin and continue that process where we stand on the shoulders of giants who have begun the process of healing from the moment that we began the resistance to slavery in the Americas. That is it. Thank you. Hi, Moots, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good.
Let's see. Waiting for Erica and Marcel.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Erica.
Hello.
Hey, Marcel.
Okay, so we were going to have a discussion.
Well, first of all, thank you.
Well, I can say. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You go ahead, Erica.
No, I just wanted to say that I'm just taking in all of the amazing information that we just got to hear from Dr. Katosa, and it's overwhelming sometimes. But thank you so much for sharing all of that with us.
Thanks.
I wanted to say that, first of all, thank you as well. The extensive history lesson. Like, how do you practice healing in your work? I mean, having to explore this kind of work, I mean, receiving it, it's like, whoa, this is a lot. I'm sure the amount of time you've put into researching and reading, like, what do you do to heal yourself?
You know, that's an interesting question. And I have to say that I have to respond by saying that I did not heal myself, that this was a collective project. When I was younger, just coming out of high school and then as an undergraduate student, there was a bookstore in Toronto called Third World Books. So in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, I was a regular at Third World Books, me and a number of other folks that have gone on to do some really amazing things. That was a really important space for us. And so wherever we can have these Black spaces and places where we can be amongst ourselves, to come to terms with the anger, the frustration, and the trauma, that's where we can be each other's guides and help each other onwards in that project of healing. Because if I were to do all this reading by myself and to simply go away by myself, I'm taking in all of 500 years of history, if not more, and then internalizing that and not being able to have a conversation with people to say, you know what, I'm really, really angry with white people at this moment. And I needed people there to say, you know what, the anger is all right. It's justifiable. It is to be expected. And I had more senior people there to hold my hand and to guide me to say that the anger is justifiable. It doesn't mean that you hate white people and that you need to make a distinction between hatred and anger. And I didn't understand that. I conflated the two, and I had some elders that helped me to understand that distinction, and that anger can be cathartic. It is necessary, and that we should not deny it, but we need to be very careful not to confuse anger with hatred, because the moment that we then begin to make that leap from anger to hatred, that's when we lose the capacity to build relationships of solidarity, even with white people.
This is so true. I definitely agree with the whole I like how you make it a point to say that we are angry and we have a right to express that anger without feeling any like shame or just feeling any type, but just feeling our anger, because I feel like that is a vital part in healing, because I think as Black people we just feel so much and we compress all of it, and it causes more damage for us to compress it rather than for us to actually allow ourselves to feel it. But in this society, we are taught really not to feel that, because we don't want to be the aggressive ones. We don't want to be angry. The list goes on. And that's been a big detriment to our community, because a lot of people are holding on to so much pain, so much anger, because they don't want to be judged.
Yeah. You know, that reminds me of
I think it also
Erica?
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think that it also reinforces why we need these safe spaces that are made up of other Black people specifically. And I think it also might help some of our white allies to understand as well why these spaces need to be made up sometimes of only Black people, just to be able to feel safe to discuss all these feelings that we have. Like mentioned before, it's a lot of history, and a lot of history that's based in trauma, right? And in order for us to really heal, we need to be able to have these spaces where we can connect together. I think it's super important.
Yeah, definitely. I just wonder, with all of these movements that are going on right now, there's Black Lives Matter, there's Say Her Name. How, as Black people, do we navigate through that? Because even within our own community, we are divided. That's a big problem that we have, that we are divided in. How do we unify as a community with these movements so change actually comes for our community?
Right. I think that's an important question that that from my vantage point, I think I'd like to make a couple distinctions though. The movement for Black Lives is not the same as Black Lives Matter. The movement for Black Lives preceded the hashtag Black Lives Matter, right? And we shouldn't confuse the two. A friend of mine, Wesley Critchlow, he's a professor at UOIT. He introduced me to the concept that we need to make a distinction between movement and moment, and that Black Lives Matter is a moment, right? Say Her Name is a moment. It is not a movement, right? They are part of a longer historical trajectory that is articulating a particular and narrating a particular way of framing that historical movement, right? And I think once we can begin to make that distinction between movement and moment, then we can begin to make another distinction between diversity versus disunity, right? And the history of the movement for Black lives has always been diverse. People have never agreed,
Right.
right? There has been consensus on our right to exist, our right to resist. That consensus transcends any particular historical moment. And I think what we need to have a conversation about is that we can be diverse. We are diverse. We have always been diverse, right? And that we can articulate a very basic minimum of consent among all of us. So whether you're LGBTQ, trans, or straight, right? We need to understand that LGBTQ, trans, this is not new, right? This has always been a part of our history. So whether you're talking about it from the vantage point of slavery, or in the Americas where you have 2 out of 3 persons were males, well, don't you think that some were gay? Like, well, why is this rocket science for us to make an argument that for us to recognize that we had a tremendous range of sexual diversity, that you can go back to the historical record in Brazil, in Jamaica, in the United States, and you will find transgendered men. But transgender needs to be broken down even more from that essentialist perspective. Because when you had people running away in marriage, you had women dressing up in false beards, pretending to be men. You had men pretending to be women. So trans has always been a part of who we are in terms of not only sexual practice, but also the practice of resistance. So once we can begin to get into our history and unearth to find out that LGBTQ trans is not new, but has always been a part of our diversity, then I think we can begin to have a different conversation about what diversity and unity can look like.
Most definitely. Did anybody else have a question? Marcel?
I just also like to add on to that. Compassion is a big thing for me. I think, as Dr. Katosa was saying, like this movement has been has lasted a very long time, and I think some people are catching up with moments to moments. And so our learning is on different levels, our experience is on different levels, our vocabulary is on different levels, our perspectives are on different levels. And I'm learning to have more compassion for a diverse or other experience that is still Black, but just makes up this wide tapestry of what Blackness means. I keep saying, like, we are not a monolith. We do not have one way of living. And I think we need to be accepting of those different ways in a compassionate, safe space.
Most definitely, most definitely. I just wanted to say thank you, Dr. Katosa, for your time and all the knowledge that you shared with us today. Definitely, as we were mentioning, this movement, everything that's happening, the momentum still keeps going, and we're still riding with the momentum. Change is going to come as long as we keep on, coming together and building these programs and letting the word out, all these history, facts, everything. As we continue to do that, I feel like change is going to continue to happen within our community. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Marcel, and thank you, Erica, for joining in on this discussion. So now we are, go ahead.
Musa, I just wanted to say that the PowerPoint is a resource to be shared with others if there's a way to do that, if folks want access to it. It's a gift to the community.
Oh, awesome. So we do have we have Facebook, we have Instagram, so definitely we'll make sure to share that for people to be able to gain access to it.
Great. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcel. Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.
So now with this. This program has been an exciting program, and we're now going to lead into DJ Mubonzo, straight from Zimbabwe, is going to be blessing us with some tunes as we transition over to City Hall for the flag raising of the Pan-African flag. So we invite you guys to join us. It is still going to be live. So after Mubonzo plays his selection, we're going to have another musical selection from Renata, who opened up this program with a beautiful song. She's going to open up the flag raising ceremony for us, and then we're going to have some speeches and the flag raising. So please enjoy Mubonzo as we transition on to the flag raising.
Good afternoon. I go by the name DJ Mubonzo. I'm a native of Zimbabwe. Been living in Canada for almost 10 years now. 11. So I'm just here to give you a little bit of vibes. All that I like to do. I play a lot of African music, a lot of hip hop, a lot of Caribbean music as well. So in the next little bit, we'll try to go through a few genres, and you'll see what it is that I do. Taking you through the musical stylings of South Africa right now.
$1 million. Say make a wire. Don't need to wanna cover my girl. He said all our friends, leave me la vida loca. If only me my lover. Yeah, you for there for me. You for there. Try the try for you. But you say if you don't get money, hide your face. Hide my face. Make another man begin one night. I love you, no mean say. You say make I put one up for fire. Fire, fire, fire. I go put up for fire. You know me say. You say make I put one up for fire. Fire, fire, fire. I go put up for if you're behind was my Casio, I will never miss you. Your front up to sleep or so. Say let go, they will shoot you. My baby that God, my baby to go. Was your mother a killer?
Back and forth, I'm going to give you a little bit of Afro beats. This is DeVito.
If you're behind was my Casio, I will never miss you. Your front up to sleep or so. Say let go, they will shoot you. My baby that God, my baby to go. Was your mother a killer? My baby no bomb, but she love me up. Was your father a soldier? Oh my flower, I will never go for feeling. If you say I'm good for nothing, therefore you're bad for something. Oh my flower, baby, it ain't for change, let go of you. If nothing else forever, me and you go be nothing forever. If nothing else forever, me and you go be nothing forever. Baby, baby, I'm a child, me and you go be nothing forever. If nothing else forever, me and you go be nothing Oh, baby, this your sweet. You cannot help it. For your matter, sit down there. You cannot have a low. If I am you on the show, follow my flower. I will never go for free. If you say I'm good for nothing, therefore you're bad for something. Follow my flower. I go fight for your love like a Django. Yeah. Tell me what you want me. I go do anything where you want me. Baby, me I no go go for you. Love the way you give me girl over. Oh baby girl, you got to trust me. If you give me make a top, I tell you nobody. Make I be your supernova. I could buy you things from Fashion Nova. I no go do you Django over. I could bless you with my Godzilla. Make I be your supernova. I could buy you things from Fashion Nova. I no go do you Django over. I could bless you with my Godzilla. Love you when you bend down, bend down. All the girls, them I give you regardless. And you be sure you be sus, but my family must like you by force. Baby, me, I no go go for you. Love you when you give me girl over. Oh, baby, girl, you got to trust it. You may make a top, I tell you nobody. Yeah, make I be your supernova. I could buy you things from Fashion Nova. Yeah, I no go do you Django over. I could bless you with my Godzilla. Make I be your supernova. I could buy you things from Fashion Nova. Yeah, I no go do you Django. If you got a lover in your life, then why you acting like you don't know? You know, say that we see be the man we make you shine all night. If you got a lover who can give you the charge when you're low. Tell me what's the reason why you steady blowing off my line? Trying to make you feel blissful. Give me daily blessings. Tonight, nothing serious, so we just wanna fix. God, bad man confess. Girl, I wanna talk about the things that we do in social. I want me make me jam, oh yeah. Come into my life, oh baby, come on, baby, make me jam. I want me make me jam, oh yeah. Come into my life, oh baby, come on, baby, make me jam. Girl, I'm loving your energy, yeah. Loving your energy, yeah. Loving your energy. She run a race for me, got with the medal, no penalty. Darling, loving your energy, Africa, woman. This I love in your mind, you never let me go. Look around the world and you find no love. Anytime I'm blowing your phone, coming like a thing, crash time and don't know. I just I love you know you need, deep in your soul. I know you would have loved me to your full control. Still I beg you do my fire, roll on my love. Very soon you never got to wait no more. Tryna make you feel this, wanna make you feel this, even though you blessings. With it, yeah, is it? So we are from you with a force, yeah. Blessings, yeah, you know it was, when I rise, I'm boss. Yeah, we get let me keep down. and it's not just for the plus. Gratitude is a must. Yeah, me see blessings fall by my right hand. But I toast with the friends that take off the load. One time did sit down in a class and we both then police said the road and we go on with the road. Third one, me say me try a thing. And you know it formed to be a fire thing. Now up on stage with chronic, say I sing, yeah, see me all diggy soon, get the higher ring like hello, brother. Say I had to sort ya, saw your poster, spectacular photo. Keep it burning, yes, that's the motto. If me the butter pass through your soul to jam all in a life, man. Me have to thank God for the journey, the earnings are just for the plus. Yeah. And gratitude is a must. Yeah, we see blessings fall from my right hand. But I toast to the friends that take off every load. One time they sit down in a class and we were then only said the road and we go on with it, go on with it. That's how our blessings upon me. And send me to tell them a story. Yeah, that's how our blessings upon me. And that's how I'm gonna give you the love. I'm in the light and Jah knows my passion is united. Got the music me excited.
Listen to the when I'm singing to you, girl. Yo, I am feeling, just feeling, I'm feeling. See what I'm feeling. Oh, baby, yeah. Do you see what I'm feeling? I'm feeling. I know you feel it too. Girl, I know it's true. Yeah. Do you want me to try to hold it back? Tell me, baby, do you like it like that? When I rock with you. Ooh, girl, let me take you to Toco Loco. When the sun go low, we could go and go, girl, go. I'm talking hours and non-stop jam. You is a gem, let me take your hand, just come and go, girl, go. Girl, why you do me that? Make me man get a heart attack, girl. The way you look back, when you run back, I feel away when you whine so pretty. Pretty wine. Flash me a pretty smile. What's on your pretty wine? Tell me, baby, say can you break me out of my bubble? I see in trouble, baby, bubble, cause I'm trouble. Break me out of my bubble. I see in trouble, baby, bubble. I'm in trouble. You make me reach for the ceiling. You give me life, you mean it. I think I walk with you. Swim in the ocean. You gotta be up when she night on me. Gotta be up when she wine on me. Gotta you look on the line right there. Now give it up cause she nice right there. When she ting down there, I swing down there. Gotta be up when she night on me. Now let this go. Come jam up on me, girl, bring that body. Spread your sweet and me darling. Cause what you do on me darling. What I feel it. See baby, I come to money. Chase some of that, yeah, have a good time. It's all I want to. So come give me all of that, yeah. I say best believe. Boy. When I find it, girl, I'm not moving. How you grooving it? Stay with me. Boy. So girl, I hope it not too late. Have me losing it. When she jam down it, then I jam down it. And when she ting down it, then I swing down it. Now let this go. When she jam down it, then I jam down it. And when she swing down it, I swing down it. Now let this go.
I hope everybody's enjoying their weekend so far. A little bit of soca music for your soul. It don't hurt to dance.
Hello. Yeah. She had the thing I love. Where she from, I don't know. She waist and go low. Pick up the place like a dojo. So what you say, what you say, what you say? The girl where you come my way. What you do, what you do, what you do? I must get through. Girl, roll up your waist, show me that wine. Turn around, girl, don't be shy. Hello, 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 hello. Yeah, so girl, I love all the way you blow my mind. Hold me tight and bring it down. Hello, 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 hello. Yeah. Are you ready? Ready? Are you ready for me? Are you ready? Ready? Are you ready for me? I'll give it up, roll up, wind it up, ride it, run to the back, roll on, just come to me. I'll give you that sweet type of love, sweet type of love. Come give me that sweet type of love, real type of love. Hold me darling, 'cause good night be jamming. Oh gosh, I'm saying, we're putting up on here, flexing. I'm saying, we're falling up on here. Every day, every day, every day, I'm a friend. But I just don't have fun. All you want is the music all night long. Till the party done. Play the music, big and strong. 'Cause I just don't have fun. Run the gun, run the gun, run the gun, to save the dawn.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us commend. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Hello and welcome to our Emancipation Days 905, and we are so excited to have brought this program here for you guys today. I'm Mutsa Tramba. We have Tasha, we have Erica, we have Jada, we have Erica, and we have Rachel, and we also have Bawe, who have been the driving force behind creating these programs today with the help of PAC, the City of St. Catharines, the mayor, everybody. We came together a month and a half ago because we wanted to do a protest, but then the mayor suggested, let's do something that's more impactful. So we were given this task to create something for Emancipation Day. And within a month and a half, we were able to create this program that you guys have been seeing throughout the past few days. And if it wasn't for all of our team members and all of the skills that we each bring, we each come from different organizations, we each have different backgrounds. Everybody brought all of their talents together and we're able to create something great. So we're thankful that we had this opportunity, and we're excited to bring you guys more things as years come. So I would like to introduce you guys to Erica Williams, who will be giving a speech for us today. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Erica Williams, and today I speak to you as a member of the Niagara Region Anti-Racism Association. I want to acknowledge that I am a guest here, and the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. I would like to acknowledge Renee Martin, who is one of the founders of the Niagara Region Anti-Racism Association. It is her passion and dedication in the fight for equity and change that continue to inspire the members of the Niagara Region Anti-Racism Association today. I'd like to also acknowledge Salah Wazirudin and Vicki Lynn Smith, as it was by their advocacy that the Pan-African flag was raised here in St. Catharines for the very first time last year. August 1st, 1834 marks the day that people of African descent were emancipated from the British colonies, although it was only formally recognized in Ontario in 2008. I believe that the thought of emancipation is easier for most people to accept, because what it means for most people is that slavery has ended. Black people are free. Therefore, there is no more work to be done. Although slavery ended on this day in 1834, the economic, social, emotional, and psychological effects of slavery still exist today. The trauma of slavery runs deep, and that trauma is manifested in all aspects of our lives, from issues of mental health, all the way to how we teach our children to engage with law enforcement, and the type of employment that we have access to. The systems which were in place and allowed slavery to exist back then are still active today, and can be seen in social and economic inequity, and specifically anti-Black racism. It is unacceptable and irresponsible for people in positions of power to profess that they are unaware of this fact. The testimony of individuals with lived experiences should not be a surprise and should not be needed to prove that systemic racism exists today. We still have a lot of work to do. As stated on the California State University Sal Macro's website through the Black Student Center, the Pan-African flag was created in 1920 by the Universal Negro Improvement Association, also known as the UNIA. The Pan-African flag is also referred to as the Marcus Garvey flag and the Universal African flag. This flag was created to represent people of the African diaspora and to symbolize Black liberation. The red represents the blood that unites all Black African ancestry and the blood that was shed for this liberation. The Black represents the people whose existence as a nation, though not a nation state, is affirmed by the existence of this flag. The green represents the abundant and vibrant natural wealth of Africa, the motherland. On this Emancipation Day, I would like us all to remember our ancestors, but I also challenge us to push forward to dismantle the systems that continue to oppress Black, Indigenous, and people of color. I'm glad that we were able to work with the City of St. Catharines to make this flag raising possible. The history, voices, and experiences of Black people matter not only today, but every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. And now we would like to bring up the Mayor, Walter Sensick, to speak a little bit for us.
Thank you very much, Lutsan. Thank you, Erica, for that wonderful speech. This is the first time I've actually spoken in front of City Hall in over 5 months. It's the first time I've spoken in public like this in over 5 months because of the situation that we're in and communities around the world are in due to COVID-19. And as a community, it's important that we still come together. And first and foremost, to Erica who's taken over, or Jada who's taken over my social media channels. It's about amplifying the voice of our Black community and showcasing businesses, showcasing the issues that are facing our communities. And being able to amplify it through social media is really another way that we can virtually bring people together. And so I want to thank everybody who's taken the time to come out here today. We have Councillor Littleton, we have Councillor Dodge, we have Councillor Porter, and a number of other councillors are watching at home. We also have our St. Catharines MP, Chris Biddle. And it's important that we come together as politicians, because as was said, it's about listening. As a political organization, we have to listen and then move. And what we've seen over the past number of months is the ability to listen, but more importantly, we need to see the action of movement to eradicate racism from our communities. And it's going to take a long time. And I just want to draw the attention to the vote that we had on Monday. We have a statue over there, and a statue represents something that was erected over 120 years ago. The statue will be removed, and it'll be removed and placed in another part of the, and I thank you. And it was a unanimous decision of council, because it stands for something that was reflective of a time and place so many years ago, but for our Indigenous community, that stands for something else. And so being able to take that off of City Hall property opens up City Hall to everybody. And this is what today is. This is what the Emancipation Day celebration is about. It's about making sure that our community is open, but also willing to listen and willing to learn. And so what we have behind me is the organizers that have made this come to life. And look at the age of the people behind me. This is the future of our city standing right here, right behind me. They're the ones that are going to amplify and continue to push for change in our community. We had a protest here not too long ago where we had over 1,000 plus people who came in here who were saying Black Lives Matter, no justice, no peace. And when you hear that and you stand here as a mayor, it has to follow with action. And so the Anti-Racism Committee, Vicki Lynn Smith, who's here today, and Soleil and their group is working very hard at putting together the concrete ways that we are going to change our community. And so this digital platform that we have here today, I hope will continue into the future. I am hopeful that next year we're going to be here with hundreds of people, and there's going to be thousands of people celebrating Emancipation Day. And then as we move forward, we're going to continue to challenge ourselves and how we think. Because if we don't challenge how we think, we're not going to change what's happening in our community. So I want to say thank you to the organizers. You've done an amazing job in over just a month. It's awesome. And so I can continue to look forward to tonight and then tomorrow with LMT Connection playing. I want to say thank you to the FirstOntario Performing Arts Centre for everything that they've done. And really, I challenge everybody who's listening. We have to be anti-racist. There's nothing in between. You're either racist or you're anti-racist. Let's all be anti-racist. Thank you very much. Now we walk over to raise the flag.
Nice to see you, Chris.
Good to see you. Come on in. Come on over here.
We're facing that way.
So how do I do this? We can do a photograph this way. And then we'll raise the flag. So we'll just try and catch as many people as possible. So I'll bring this down a bit. If the photographers want to shoot this way, I'm just going to get everybody to come in a bit and get a group photo of keeping socially sort of distance.
Oh, and then.
Yeah. Yeah, because the camera's going to go this way.
There it is.
There you go. Right there. Stand right there. There you go.
And then look to me. There we are.
All right. You got them all in? Is this just for Matter Black? Yeah, we're just trying to get people fun in, Chris. You just got to keep your distance. Make sure that we're.
Hi, Bowie. Absolutely.
You can go over.
Well, friends, there we have it. We have raised the flag. It's beautiful, blowing in the wind. Join us this evening at the FirstOntario Performing Arts Centre. We have OCAN, an awesome Afro-Cuban groove kind of band. A lot of fun. They'll be at 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. in the backyard. We ask everybody to wear their masks, please. There'll be 100 people capacity in the backyard space, and we've created pods. So 2 adults per pod, or 2 adults and up to 2 adults and 2 children per pod. And the performance will be 1 hour at 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. And then tomorrow night, you'll join me and all the awesome organizers from Black 0905 and Matter of Black for LMT Connection. And that will be a live stream through all of the channels of this weekend. So thank you, Mutsa. Thank you, everyone.